media capital of the world.
During the current state of emergency due to COVID-19, council members will be participating online, and the public will not be able to physically attend today's meeting. To participate in the general public comment period, please call now at 818-238-3335. Members of the public may speak for up to 3 minutes depending upon the number of speakers.
Good evening and welcome to a regular Burbank City Council meeting on Tuesday, January 11th, 2022. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll ask our City Manager, could you please lead us in the pledge?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Madam City Clerk, please conduct the roll.
Thank you. Councilmember Frutos.
Present. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Councilmember Schultz.
Present.
Councilmember Springer.
Here.
Vice Mayor Anthony. I see the camera's off. I'm assuming he's present. I'll take Mayor Talamantes, and then we'll go back to the Vice Mayor
Yes,
to make
present.
sure he's present. Thank you.
Okay, apparently our Vice Mayor's tied up for a minute, so we'll show him present when he shows himself on camera. There will be one period of general public comment tonight. If you would like to participate, please call now at 818-238-3335. Once again, it's 818-238-3335. Callers will be placed in a queue until we begin public comment. And I see that our Vice Mayor has joined us. Madam City Clerk? All right, thank you. We have 4 announcements this evening.
The following are announcements for January 11th, 2022. The City of Burbank will be participating in the Greater Los Angeles Homeless Count on the night of January 25th, 2022, starting at 7 p.m. Volunteers are needed to canvass our neighborhoods, parks, and public spaces as part of the count. Volunteers need to sign up as teams and should consist of a minimum of 2 individuals per team. The count usually lasts 2 hours, and this event will be contactless using mobile technology. To register, please visit theycountwillyou.org or the City of Burbank website, burbankca.gov, under the latest announcements banner. The Burbank City Clerk's Office is accepting applications for 1 vacancy on the Art in Public Places Committee for an unexpired term ending July 31st, 2022. The deadline to submit an application is Wednesday, February 2nd at 5 p.m. If interested, apply online at burbankca.gov/BCC application. For more information, please contact the Clerk's Office at 818-238-5851 or email cityclerks@burbankca.gov. The Burbank City Clerk's Office is accepting applications for 5 positions on the Charter Review Committee. The term is contingent upon completion of the charter review. The deadline to submit an application is Wednesday, February 2nd at 5 p.m. If interested, apply online at burbankca.gov/BCC application. For more information, please contact the City Clerk's Office at 818-238-5851 or email cityclerks@burbankca.gov. The City of Burbank is excited to announce the soon-to-be official launch of the Our Burbank 311 mobile app. The Our Burbank 311 app will improve how residents obtain information, report problems, request services, and connect with local government. You will be able to download the app from the Apple iTunes Store or Google Play Store by searching Our Burbank 311. More information will be coming on January 25th. We have a video to show you how it will work.
Hi, I'm Mr. Bob Cat, and I live and work right here in Burbank. And I'm excited to share with you the launch of the Our Burbank 311 mobile app, an app that will improve how Burbank residents and businesses connect with their city and request services. To get started, download the app from the Apple or Google Play Store by searching Our Burbank 311. Once you create an account, you can submit city service requests, like this resident here, who needs help with the disposal of an old chair. From the service request menu, she'll select bulky item pickup, fill in the missing information, provide a photo, and click Submit. The request will then be reviewed by a city employee and routed to the correct department. Once assigned, city crews will go to the site and complete the bulky item pickup. And a great bonus is that account holders can keep tabs of the progress of their requests all within the app. Pretty cool, huh? And it's not just for bulky item pickup. You can report graffiti, potholes, homeless encampments, and many more services are on the way. Using the Our Burbank 311 mobile app is so simple. Download it today. Catch you on the flip side. Bye.
Excellent. It's so simple and cool, by the way. I'm looking forward to more additions to that service that we're providing to the community. We have 2 council presentations on the agenda this evening. Our first presentation is a recognition of the Burbank Tournament of Roses Association, also known as BTORA. BTORA is the organization responsible for the city's annual float entries since 1947. The 2022 entry marked BTORA's 74th consecutive float entry and the city's 89th float entry in the parade. The City of Burbank is one of 6 remaining self-built floats. The 2022 Rose Float Parade theme was Dream, Believe, and Achieve. Burbank's float was titled An Unlikely Tale and was designed by Jonathan Friday, a Burbank resident. As many of you know, this year's float received the Mayor's Award. We are very proud and grateful to BTORA for that award. On behalf of the Burbank City Council, I would like to extend our congratulations to the Burbank Tournament of Roses Association for winning the Mayor's Award, and I present BTORA with this certificate, as you can see there on the screen. Thank you to the volunteers who have helped make this year's float a reality. Putting a float together is a year-long endeavor and not a simple task. We appreciate your time, energy, skills, and dedication. Thank you. Joining us tonight is Linda Kosakis, President of the Burbank Tournament of Roses Association. Ms. Kosakis, welcome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Good evening, Mayor Talamantes, council members. My name is Linda Kosakos, and I am the president of Burbank Tournament of Roses Association. On behalf of the association, we are so proud to have won the Mayor's Award for our 2022 entry in the Rose Parade titled An Unlikely Tale. This award is for the most outstanding float from a participating city. I would like to thank the City Council, city departments for all their support, including Burbank Police Department, Burbank Water and Power, Public Works Parks and Recreation, and other valuable departments. We are so thankful for the many volunteers that construct, process material, and decorate our award-winning float. I would like to give a huge shout out to John Reeves, Construction Chair, Bob Hutt, Vice President Administration, Stephen Edward, Vice President Float, Kim Bosley and Jeff Ceccatini, Decoration Chairs. Let's not forget the local businesses that provided meals to our volunteers and donated decoration materials, including Berrigan's Mexican Restaurant, Chili John's, Gelada, Handy Market, Holiday Inn, Lancers, Martino's Bakery, Popeye Chicken on San Fernando, Santoro's, Tequila's, Ugly Mug, Wiener Schnitzel, and Western Bagel. If you are interested in deconstruction of our float schedule for this Saturday, January 15th, or submitting a design to be considered for our 2023 float, please visit www.burbankrosefloat.com for more information. I am so honored to be part of Burbank Tournament of Roses and bring joy to so many people, and of course, making Burbank proud. Thank you for honoring us.
Ms. Kousakis, can you share what is the theme for next year?
We actually don't have the theme yet.
Okay.
We were given a slight hint, but it's nothing that we're privy to announce at this time.
It's a secret. Okay.
It's a secret. Until the president of the 2023 parade announces it, we are not allowed to divulge our hint that we were given.
Understand. Thank you very much. Councilmember Frutos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Kazakos, I just wanted to say thank you. Obviously, my wife volunteered several nights there. You had the chairman of the police commission volunteering with his wife. You definitely mobilized the community. And I know that all of us through the mayor, we're very fortunate and blessed to have great volunteers. And keep up the good work. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Kousakis, thank you for being here with us, and we're looking forward to many more trophies in coming years. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you again for having me. Have a wonderful evening.
Likewise. Our second presentation is a proclamation declaring January 17th, 2022 as a Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the city of Burbank. Whereas the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was born in Atlanta, Georgia on January 15, 1929, and rose to national prominence as a leader of the American Civil Rights Movement in the 1950s and 60s. And whereas Dr. King's commitment to the elimination of injustice and the doctrine of nonviolence helped bring down legal and political barriers across America. Whereas Dr. King's leadership, will, and compassion at city protests throughout our nation inspired millions to believe in his dream for an America in which everyone is treated equally and justly. And whereas people everywhere continue to look to Dr. King's example as a model in human relations, and his role in the struggle for civil rights will continue until his vision of universal freedom, equality, and justice is finally realized. Now, therefore, I, Jess Talamantes, Mayor of the City of Burbank, do hereby proclaim January 17, 2022 as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the City of Burbank, and encourage my fellow residents to reflect on the principles of racial equality and nonviolent social change espoused by Dr. King. Joining us tonight is Tamala Takahashi, Vice President of the Burbank Human Relations Council. Ms. Takahashi, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, and the Burbank community. My name is Tamala Takahashi. I'm the Vice President of Social Action and a board member of the Burbank Human Relations Council. As many of you know, the BHRC is a community-based, all-volunteer organization established over 60 years ago with the mission to build bridges of understanding in our community. Thank you for inviting BHRC to receive the proclamation declaring January 17th, 2022 as Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the city of Burbank. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Everybody can be great because anybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love." It is in this spirit of this sentiment and in honor of Dr. King, the BHRC invites the Burbank community to join together in honoring his legacy on January 17th at 6:30 p.m. on Zoom for our dedication and special speaker, Gloria Gray, the first African American to serve as chair of the Metro Water District of Southern California. Also this coming Friday, January 14th at 7 p.m., the BHRC would like to invite members of our community to come together and discuss important issues of inclusion, race, and nonviolence at an online race relay hosted by writer and producer Denise Hamilton. This is the third in a series and has garnered much appreciation and connection amongst our community participants. One more opportunity to celebrate the work of Dr. King is a visit to the inspirational Burbank United Against Hate poster art exhibit at the Geo Gallery. This is on display Monday through Friday through the end of January. And if you do not already have a Choose Love, Be Kind yard sign, you can pick one up there as well. For information on these events and other opportunities to be involved with BHRC, please visit our website, www.burbankhumanrelationscouncil.org, or email thebhrc@gmail.com. Thank you again, Mr. Mayor, Council, and the City of Burbank for recognizing that the fight for justice is ongoing and that we can use this day to reflect on the work that Dr. King started while taking responsibility for the work we still have left to do. Now it is my pleasure to introduce a woman, Stephanie McCoy, who's an example of how we do this work in one of the most important areas of our community, with our kids, teachers, and parents. Stephanie currently serves as the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Consultant for BUSD. She's earned her Master's in Global Affairs at NYU and is currently in her doctoral studies in education at USC. She will be conducting a district-wide DEI audit with BUSD and make recommendations regarding the future implementation of policy, practice, instruction, and engagement. We at BHRC thank her for her efforts, and BUSD as well, and look forward to continuing working with her on this effort. Stephanie, thank you for being with us here tonight.
Thank you, Tamla. Thank you for the introduction and a wonderful overview of how BHRC is contributing to DEI. Good evening, Mayor Talamantes and council members. Thank you for this time. I definitely want to echo what Tamla said about Dr. King. Dr. King was an advocate for equity, inclusion, and diversity. I first want to start with one of his quotes he spoke on at the March of Washington in 1963. Dr. King states, "At this point, I often wonder whether or not education is fulfilling to its purpose. A great majority of the so-called educated people do not think logically and scientifically. Even the press, the classroom, the platform, and the pulpit in many instances do not give us objective and unbiased truths. To save man from the morass of propaganda, in my opinion, is one of the chief aims of education. Education must enable one to sit and weigh evidence to discern the truth from the false, the real from unreal, and the facts from the fiction." I close quote. This is one of my favorite quotes from Dr. King. When we think about education, we think about access, we think about opportunity. Some of the historical barriers we face in education were due to housing impacts, social and economic statuses. If you lived in communities of color, your education was disproportionately impacted, and the opportunities were limited. So now that we have a hand in education, now that we have a hand in DEI, my job, along with BUSD, is to make it more inclusive and accessible to all of our students. Some of the goals I want to attach to Dr. King's mission is to have an informed curriculum. Dr. King mentioned about having truth and facts. An informed curriculum that we plan to incorporate debunks the myths and provides a full history of education, focusing on all the great leaders of the true history of America. We want to cater to our different learning styles. We have different students in our school that have mental health issues, that have disabilities, that have different ways that they learn education. We want to make sure we're meeting their needs. We want to provide professional development for teachers and staff to be more culturally sensitive when talking about issues of race, of sexism, of LGBTQ, and of issues of ethnicities. We want to provide our diverse literature that showcases authors from our diverse and ethnic backgrounds. We want to update our policies to be more inclusive to our current student population and demographic. And lastly, as Tamla said, I myself, and along with BUSD, are conducting a thorough needs assessment through survey collection to better understand the needs of our students, our staff, our parents, teachers, and faculty. And based on these surveys, we're going to get back in the next month. We plan to make high recommendations and benchmarks of how we're going to meet equity needs for BUSD in general. I want to thank you for this time. Thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of MLK and the proclamation that the city of Burbank has put on. Thank you for this time.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Takahashi, and thank you, Ms. McCoy, for being here. As a reminder, if you would like to participate in general public comment, please call now at 818-238-3335. Once again, 818-238-3335. City Manager Hess, do you have anything to report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have one item. I'd like to call upon our Management Services Director, Betsy McClinton, to provide us a brief update on our city employee testing and vaccine policy.
Thank you very much, City Manager Hess. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the council. Again, I'm Betsy McClinton with the Management Services Department. I'm here to provide just a brief update to the City Council on the implementation of the city's COVID-19 employee testing policy and the COVID-19 employee vaccination policy. The city's weekly testing policy for employees who are unvaccinated has been implemented since the middle of December. We are currently in our 4th week of testing. Additionally, the city is moving forward with implementation of the employee vaccination mandate. Employees who are unvaccinated will have until Friday, January 21st to submit requests for exemptions. The City Council included the city's boards, commissions, and committee members in the vaccination mandate. The members received information regarding the vaccination mandate and exemption requests last Friday, and their proof of vaccination or exemption requests are also due on Friday, January 21st. So I'd like to close my brief comments just by reporting that as of today, 80.87% of the city's employees are vaccinated, which is up from about 73% prior to the implementation of the testing policy. The City Council's leadership in adopting both the testing policy and the vaccination policy has certainly contributed to this positive outcome for the city's employees. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this brief update, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Any questions? No. Mr. Hess?
That's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. McClintock.
Thank you.
We have one presentation on the agenda this evening. I would like to welcome Carol Ann Coates, Building Administration Manager, to do a presentation on the new City of Burbank online building permit program. Simple online permits. That sounds nice and easy, user-friendly. Simple online permits. Ms. Coates, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Talamantes and members of the City Council, and for this opportunity to make this presentation this evening. Tonight, Community Development is in collaboration with the Information Technology Department is excited to announce the launch of Simple Online Permitting, the latest enhancement to the Citizen Access Portal. The Online Building Permit Portal is a website that allows residents to remotely obtain simple permits, saving them a visit to the Community Services Building or emailing an application to Building and Safety Division. During the first phase, the portal is accepting applications for dishwashers and water heaters, and it will expand in the coming year to include other simple repair and maintenance type permits. Customers using the portal will receive a valid permit in approximately 5 minutes. Next slide, please. This is the website. It's permit.burbankca.gov. And typing this into your address bar will take you to the Citizen Access Portal landing page as shown in this slide. Go to the new user registration at the bottom to create a login. Next slide, please. In addition to dishwasher and water heater permits, the portal allows residents and customers to pay plan check and permit fees, obtain garage sale permits, obtain large non-commercial vehicle permits, schedule building inspections, renew a business license, pay business tax, and check property permit information. Next slide, please. So what's next? CDD is continually seeking improvements in ways to minimize the time and effort that ordinarily go into obtaining a permit. As mentioned, the portal will expand to accept applications for other simple permits such as electrical service, repipes, HVAC equipment, re-roofs, and window replacement. In addition, we will be uploading online application forms to make it easier for customers to request permit and plan check extensions or update their business tax account status. And we are working on an application site for new business tax and business license applications. Last slide, please. So here's the link again. It can be found on the city's website and Building Division's homepage, permit.burbankca.gov. Online permitting expands customer service by allowing residents to obtain permits at their own convenience. For individuals who prefer to submit applications in person, however, they may still do so at the building permit counter, which is currently open by appointment Monday through Friday mornings and early afternoons. Again, we want to thank Kevin Gray, IT Director, and his information technology team for making these upgrades possible and working together with CDD for a safe, beautiful, and thriving community. Thank you, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Coates. Council members, any questions, comments? Councilmember Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief, but I just wanted to first thank staff. I think this is just terrific. And when we talk about making government more accessible and responsive to the needs of our residents, this is where the rubber meets the road. So really excited about this. My only question is on the fourth slide, when you talk about some of the coming attractions, more simple permit options, for example, does staff have an estimated timeline for how soon we might start expanding our service offerings?
That's currently underway, and we're hoping to make some improvements later on this year. We don't have a date yet, but we're hoping mid to the end of the year.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Frutos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Coates, thank you for the report. I think this is really exciting. My only question is, will the residents be able to still get a hold of a live person? Because, you know, some of us are challenged. I'll use myself as an example. Sometimes I try to use my phone to try to access, not here, but in other things. But will there be a live city employee to help out the residents should they not want to use the, 311 app?
Yes, absolutely. You can call us, email us, and we're happy to help you at the counter to come in and get your simple permits over the counter for whatever you need.
Okay, great. I think this is great, but like I said, I'm still concerned that people that have gray hair like me that sometimes are challenged with this new technology, but outstanding.
Real quick, Ms. Coates, you mentioned in your presentation that in years to come, you'll be making changes. I was hoping to hear in months to come as opposed to years. Years sounds like it's so far away.
Yes, I'm sorry if I misspoke. We met later this year, actually, so we will be rolling out the other simple repair and maintenance permits, re-roofs, electrical service. We issue a lot of those types of permits. So we are just as excited to improve the portal as soon as possible.
What are some of the challenges that you or Mr. Gray face in regards to speeding up this process?
Some of the permits require a two-step process. So for example, an electrical service, we need to make sure the customer has something called the meter spot or a confirmation of service from water or power. And we need to check that first before we issue their permit. And then there are other code requirements like for example, in the mountain fire zone, where we have to make sure that the re-roof materials or the types of windows being selected comply with the code requirements for those zones. And so that will probably be like a two-step process where the customer applies, we verify the code requirements that need to be verified, and then we can go forward and issue the permit.
Okay, great, thank you. Looking forward to many more improvements. For the residents, obviously, quality of life issues, and some people can't get out They'd rather do it in front of their computer, a lot easier, like 2 in the morning.
Yep.
It just makes it easier.
24/7.
Customer friendly. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Mr. City Attorney, will you please report on closed session?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. This evening, City Council met in closed session with its labor negotiator, Ms. Betsy McClinton, Management Services Director, pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.3, to discuss negotiations with Burbank City Employees Association, Burbank Management Association, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Burbank Firefighters, International Association of Firefighters Local 778, Burbank Firefighters Chief Officers Unit, Burbank Police Officers Unit, unrepresented managers, Z Group, executives, city attorney, and city manager. City Council took no reportable action this evening.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Now is the time for general public comment. Members of the public may address the council for up to 3 minutes on any matter concerning city business. Remember to lower the volume on your TV or computer and take your phone off speaker when you deliver public comment. To participate, please call 818-238-3335. Once again, it's 818-238-3335. Madam City Clerk, do we have any callers online for public comment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and we're ready to go.
Excellent.
Our first caller is Nicholas DeWolf.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, and thank you for your continued service to our city. Let me begin by wishing you all a happy new year and best wishes pursuant to the recent council reorganization. I took the liberty of sending City Council members a brief email earlier today. In case Council members may not have had time to review that communication, I wanted to take a brief moment to reiterate the basic gist. Given SB 9 and SB 10 and tonight's agenda item 8, I feel it's incumbent on us and urgent to ensure that we recognize how important land use planning control is to the identity and prosperity of our city. There's no denying nor avoiding the need to accommodate inevitable population growth, which immediately presents an imperative to manage and shepherd that growth responsibly and sustainably, leveraging it to enrich and enhance our growing communities instead of destabilizing and or undermining them. This is a city of strong yet quiet historical character, what with unique single-family residential communities built for 20th century aerospace and entertainment employees, world-leading studio campuses, diversified small business enclaves, the Verdugo Hills communities, etc. And a variety of retail and multifamily developments also promise exciting future growth and economic health. And I'm thinking offhand of downtown Burbank, Golden State District, Avion, Premier on First, Laterra, the recent and ongoing investments in our hospitals, the Gary Warner Brothers development, etc., etc. With this in mind, I urge the City Council and City staff to consider the following important imperatives. First, we must protect the aforementioned historical neighborhoods where today sit uniquely attractive yet accessible residential communities and boutique retail districts, Magnolia Park, etc., zones that must be protected and cherished and not subjected to blind erasure from afar. Second, we must confirm those pre-existing and emerging higher density zones such as downtown Burbank, Golden State, Avion, etc. that I mentioned earlier, where the city can even more enthusiastically promote residential development of the sort promoted by SB 9 and SB 10. In order to be able to actively support these two imperatives, the municipality must have the authority to manage and direct housing development in a manner that best reflects the granular districts mentioned above that I just talked about, zealously preserving historical identities in some areas, whilst elsewhere supporting manageable growth and increased affordability for expanding demographics and generations. So I strongly urge the Council to support the Neighborhood Voices initiative as robustly as possible, in so much as this initiative represents a crucial first step in ensuring that the City of Burbank does not unnecessarily surrender its nuanced and vibrant identity to legislatures in a faraway city who have no sense of what will best serve this municipality's long-term economic, demographic, and social health. I thank you all for your kind consideration.
Thank you, Mr. DeWolf. Next.
Our next caller is Tina Outlaw.
Welcome.
Oh, well, good evening, everyone. My name is Tina Outlaw. I am the Director of Research, Development, and Engineering, representing Anagram International, one of the largest balloon manufacturers in the world. We sell to retailers, including the mom-and-pop shops here in Burbank. We are expressing our opposition to the ordinance prohibiting the sale of Mylar balloons and ask your support for Assembly Member Quirk's AB 847 bill by not moving forward with this ordinance. To create a cohesive statewide solution for conducted balloons, we've been working collaboratively with Party City, the California Retail Association, the Balloon Council, and Sempra Energy. Together, we've been working with Assembly Member Quirk on a solution, and that has been AB 847. Our implementation timeline reflects the ongoing COVID challenges that we've all had with continuing postponements. We've had to deal with travel restrictions and comply with social distancing requirements. It has impacted our ability to do on-site testing essential to establish a safe and feasible product. In addition, we've had supply chain issues that have delayed our access to necessary equipment to make this product. The AB 847 bill that's co-authored by Assembly Member Lorena Gonzalez creates a long-term solution by setting a single standard for foil balloons. This bill utilizes cutting-edge, non-conductive technologies that will prevent those rare instances of balloon-caused power outages. This statewide solution also takes in a consideration the economic reality of businesses like those in Burbank who rely on balloon sales. Individual ordinances threaten the viability of AB 847 and the development of the non-conductive balloon technology. Because of this, it is critical that Burbank does not go it alone in banning Mylar balloons, but instead supports the statewide solution. We know from Glendale that their ban on balloon sales has negatively impacted local and small businesses. We don't know if it has resulted in a reduction in the number of power outages because of Mylar balloons. There's a considerable amount of uncertainty in the data regarding the effectiveness of banning balloons to reduce power outages. Alternatively, educating consumers regarding responsible balloon use has proven to be successful. In conclusion, we respectfully ask the City of Burbank to support the statewide solution of AB 847 by not moving forward with the local ordinance prohibiting the sale of Mylar balloons. Burbank's balloon ban will cause significant economic harm to local businesses, including minority-owned small
Thank you very much. Your
businesses.
3 minutes are up. Thank you. Next speaker.
Our next caller is Beverly Kenworthy.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Beverly Kenworthy, and I am the Deputy Regional Director for the Southern California section of the High Speed Rail Authority. Thank you for having me with you tonight. I started with the authority in June of 2021, and I'm here today to make some general comments about the correspondence we sent to the city yesterday, as well as to reiterate our commitment to working with the city throughout our entire project. As you know, the authority has over 10 years history working with the city of Burbank on the Burbank to LA Union Station preferred alternative. In addition, these past 5 years, we've worked closely with the city on your Golden State Plan. We believe that there are a number of benefits this section will give to the region, including our regional transportation partners. We will be modernizing the existing corridor with 100% renewable energy and improving safety along the way. Some of our early investment projects along this corridor will include a number of grade separations where we'll be separating trains and automobiles and pedestrians. As is in the Central Valley, where we're currently under construction, we will be creating a number of very well-paying jobs. Our estimate is almost 6,000 direct jobs and 5,900 indirect. Currently in the Central Valley, we are over 7,000 jobs that have been created, with about 1,000 people on the job at any particular day. All of this, plus the environmental benefits to having an electrified rail, we believe that this will just bring numerous benefits to the region. In addition, it isn't just once the rail is operational. Our construction equipment is, top of the line. It has the highest rating for low greenhouse gas emissions. We have been meeting with community stakeholders and will continue to do so in a robust manner throughout this process. And we are committed to our working relationship with the City of Burbank as this project moves forward. Thank you for your time tonight, and we appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Our next caller is Ryan Elaine.
Welcome.
Hello, my name is Ryan Elaine, and I'm Manager of State and Local Government Affairs at the California Retailers Association. And I'm speaking today to express our respectful opposition to the ordinance prohibiting the sale of Mylar balloons. I'd like to start off by thanking the mayor and all the council members for taking the time to meet with us and hear our concerns. We really appreciate that. We have been collaborating with retailers, manufacturers, and utility companies, along with Assemblymember Quirk and the state legislature, to find a statewide solution for conductive balloons. All stakeholders understand power outages are a public safety issue, and that is better addressed with a comprehensive statewide approach, rather than by a patchwork of local ordinances. And the efficacy of these ordinances, banning Mylar foil balloons, is yet to be known. But what is known is the negative impact it does have on local retailers. Assemblymember Quirk's Assembly Bill 847 creates a long-term statewide solution by setting a single standard for foil balloons. This was, as mentioned earlier, to utilize non-conductive technologies that will not react if they come into contact with a power line. Again, as just was previously mentioned, there are some barriers to that technology, but we are committed to working towards and seeing that technology come to the consumer market. And as of yesterday, this bill is currently active in the state legislature, and we are even meeting virtually with the author this week. I've noticed that Burlington Water and Power has been awarded nationally for its reliability to provide electricity to its residents, with less than 5 minutes of power outages in 2019, compared to the national average of 5 hours that same year. So I think that another better way to prevent power outages and maintain this high reliability rate is through a city-run educational campaign for consumers, emphasizing that it is already illegal under state law to release conductive balloons. We respectfully ask the council to not move forward with this ordinance and instead support the Assembly Bill 847. Thank you all for your time, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Our next caller is Laura LaRocca.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Talamantes and members of the City Council. Happy New Year to you and the staff. My name is Laura LaRocca, and I'm a resident of Burbank Rancho. This evening, I'm calling about item number 8 and ask the city to support the Our Neighborhood Voices initiative at www.ourneighborhoodvoices.com. The initiative restores the authority of our local representatives, you, to decide what gets built in the community. I've called in to several council meetings expressing concerns about SB 9, 10, 35, and the impact to our R1 and R1H Rancho neighborhoods. We all talk about Sacramento taking away local control. This is an opportunity to do something about it. Just today, the Our Neighborhood Voices initiative earned the coveted endorsement of the Southern California Association of Governments, representing over 191 cities, and serves as the nation's largest association of local governments. I would like to thank Councilmember Springer for endorsing the initiative as an individual. Now I'm asking the Council and staff to review the initiative and hopefully, as a council, lend your name to the growing list of leaders. Thank you, and I look forward to your discussion.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Okay, thank you.
Our next caller is Gayan Metchian.
Hello, good evening, and I'm hearing myself echoing, and I will try not to let that distract me. I have been a Burbank resident for well over 35 years. I have a PhD in psychology. I recently purchased my own home here in lovely Burbank 3 years ago on Meyer Street. Unfortunately, the reason for my call is the following. I'm very concerned. As you well know, there are secondhand smoke dangers for individuals who are exposed to the secondhand smoke of both cigarettes, and we are very well aware of that, as well as marijuana smoke. I'm very concerned that recently when the state has approved the use of marijuana, that there's a small minor health concern to everyone who is exposed to the marijuana smoke outdoors. Specifically, in this case, I am going to focus on single-family homeowners who are exposed to the secondhand marijuana smoke, which has many carcinogens and toxins in them, to their next-door neighbors, especially next-door neighbors who have children, especially next-door neighbors who have chronic respiratory diseases, including asthma and sinus inflammation, which the smoke from the marijuana, because of its toxins and its a lot of carcinogens and irritants, aggravates these respiratory conditions for their neighbors who are unable to now enjoy their backyards and while paying over $10,400 in property taxes each year. And their next-door neighbor suddenly decides that they want to smoke marijuana in their backyard. When there are a lot of harmful substances in marijuana other than the THC that they're getting high on. So this is a major health concern. It affects both children and individuals with respiratory conditions, chronic respiratory conditions, and nobody should be paying a lot of property taxes, working hard to maintain their home while having their health harmed, literally, by their next-door neighbor who doesn't give 2 cents about them harming your health. In my case, I've been suffering from chronic sinus and asthma for the last over 10 years, and suddenly my neighbor next door just last month decided to start smoking his marijuana twice a day, every day, since mid-December last year. Even though, and I have to now wear a 3M N95 respirator mask when I step outside for about 15-20 seconds to throw away my trash from inside my home into the trash bins, because this man is arbitrarily smoking marijuana at least twice a day consecutively, and it's harmed my health, and I've had to go on additional prednisone oral medications for it. This should not be how neighbors treat other neighbors.
Thank you for your call. Your time is up. Thank you for calling. Next speaker.
All right, thank you.
Our next caller is Andre Dionysian.
Welcome.
Hi. So first, I want to wish a belated Happy New Year to everyone on council, and congratulate our new mayor and vice mayor. Second, small procedural thing I just wanted to comment on. I was watching the closed session earlier that was, the front bit that's broadcast on YouTube before and on the Burbank channel before it gets closed. And I noticed, there's a public comment section there. And while I personally didn't have anything to comment on, negotiations with city employees, if we're going to have a public comment period, I think we should take it seriously. And it's probably just a mistake, but I've noticed it more than once. So I don't want it to become a pattern. But when, Mr. Mayor, when you said, are there any callers, only then was the phone number put on the screen briefly before the answer was given, no, there are no callers. And, the phone number is available online, just a little bit of a concern of mine. That was all. Have Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Our next caller is Jay Geisenheimer.
Welcome.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Councilmen, and women. Jay Geisenheimer, 25-year Rancho resident. I have called in the last 3 council meetings and spoke about OurNeighborhoodVoices.com, and I am thrilled to see it on the agenda. My vision is the vote is 5-0 as our council people stand up and represent us, the small town of Burbank, and help bring local control back to you so you can do your jobs for us. And our Neighborhood Voices has just had a huge recent victory with the support of SCAG and the 191 cities they represent. My vision is you support this and announce to Burbankians they should support it too. Get rid of SB 35, 9, 10, and shame on the representatives that supported it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Our next caller is Penny Katzman.
Welcome.
Hi, good evening. I'm a lifetime Burbank resident. Lived here all my life. My main concern tonight is the intersection of Buena Vista and Burbank. As you know, it's probably one of the worst intersections here, and I happen to live on it, unfortunately. And through our residents here of this particular, I think it's about 30 years, we've had every single car taken out of our family by reckless drivers. We've had a car up in our lawn. Just this 15 minutes into the new year, this year, we had a horrible drunk driver total out my son's car and take out 2 other cars, flipping my son's truck onto the sidewalk. Thank goodness no one was out at that time. But I could go on and on. But now we don't even know where the drunk driver is. I mean, I don't even know how to find her. But I don't know what's going to be done about the intersection. I don't even want to walk down the street because you never feel safe because they're just speeding 24 hours a day. It doesn't matter. The speeding is getting worse, and the accidents are horrendous, and yet I've seen nothing done. They come zooming in and out of the alleys. You've got the 7-Eleven, you have the paint store, the bend, just something, I don't know. I don't have 3 minutes to go on and on. I think everybody knows how bad it really is, and basically I don't want to die here. It's horrible. I can't even sell my house. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mr. Mayor, if you give me just 1 second. Okay, it's confirmed that we don't have any callers. Thank you.
No more callers in. There being no further public comment, I now declare the public comment period closed. Now is the time for a brief response from City Council, the City Manager, and or the City Attorney. I'd just like to thank all the speakers for sharing your views, your concerns with the council and the public at large. Thank you very much. Stay engaged, and that's how we make change. Council members or Mr. City Manager, any comments?
We can let the council members know.
Yeah, let me ask the council members first, and then we can go to the City Manager and City Attorney. Council members, any responses to the speakers? Council member Sharon Springer?
Yes, to all the callers. It's always helpful when you do call in. And with respect to Mr. Dionysian's comment, that does sound something like we might want to put the phone number up a little earlier. And also for Penny, the last caller, can we check on the light timing and get back to her? I know it won't help against a drunk driver, but it could help in another way. Thank you.
Any other council members? Councilmember Frutos.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank everybody. I'm going to hold my comments for item number 8 when it comes up. But with regards to high-speed rail, to the caller that called in, your outreach has not been the best because all the residents, about 1,400 of them that live between Hollywood Way, Buena Vista, and Empire, none of them know this is happening. None of them have been reached out to door. These are older community members. So I really think you need to reevaluate how your outreach goes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other council members? Councilmember Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like my colleagues have said, I'll reserve my comment till we get to the appropriate agenda item. I just wanted to follow up with regards to Ms. Katzman. I'm very sorry to hear about this incident in front of your home. I have your contact information, so I'll be reaching out. I'd like to talk to you about what this council has already authorized moving forward to make our streets a little bit safer. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. City Manager Hess?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just a couple things as far as the public comment phone number. If we don't already, we will make sure for closed session that we will advertise that phone number prior to the actual meeting start. So there is a little time for somebody to be able to call in. We could certainly do that. And as well for Mrs. Katzman, police is following up on that issue. I know we received an email regarding that, and I will make sure that PD provides an update to council later this week. With I know there was it was a lengthy email that had some different items and components in them, and we'll get you an update regarding that. So thank you.
Mr. City Attorney?
Nothing from me, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Once again, thank you for everybody calling in and sharing your thoughts with us, your concerns. That's how we make change, improve. Okay, the consent calendar may be enacted in one motion. Madam City Clerk, please read the consent calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 1 is adoption of a resolution extending the local emergency caused by COVID-19. Item 2, adoption of findings to continue virtual meetings for City Council and all other city boards, commissions, and committees during the pandemic. Item 3, approval of the proceed City Council meeting schedule for calendar year 2022. Item 4, adoption of a resolution adopting the updated rules and regulations governing utility service. Item 5, adoption of a resolution authorizing application for the CalRecycle Edible Food Recovery Grant for fiscal year 2021-22 and 2022-23. And that concludes the items.
Thank you. Before I move for a motion on the consent, I'd like to have a brief description of item number 5, just so the council and the public is aware of what that really entails.
Sure, Mr. Mayor, we do have the person spearheading that on staff, and that's Amber Duran, and she should hopefully be on screen soon.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Talamantes and council members. I'm Amber Duran. I'm the new recycling coordinator over at the Recycle Center. And yes, so this grant is an opportunity for us to develop an edible food recovery program by using grant funds from CalRecycle to fund transportation and redistribution of edible food that would otherwise be going into the landfill and using it to feed people in need. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have on it, or if you would like any more details.
Yeah, basically, I just wanted you to go over what this grant is going to help with within the community, because I know there's a requirement that went into effect, January 1st of this year?
Yes, which has been postponed a little bit. We have a little bit more time with that requirement, but SB 1383 requires the city to develop an edible food recovery program that supports businesses that will be mandated to donate excess food, including large grocery stores and restaurants and hospitals that serve food, and then using that to redistribute it to the community. And so what we have decided to do is to trust the experts that have been doing this kind of recovery programs through the nonprofits. And we partnered with a nonprofit that's done it in a neighboring community in North Hills. And they will be administering the actual program of coordinating and collecting the food and then providing ways to redistribute it. And we are going to be administrating the grant and also using this to kind of advertise what we're doing and use it to also be able to expand all that edible food recovery into the community. So
What's the total amount of the grant?
it's about $250,000.
Will that be able to assist some of the businesses in the community as well?
So the way that this is assisting the businesses is the businesses that are mandated to donate their excess food. That's a pretty heavy burden for them if they don't have those programs in place to collect it. And so this will kind of relieve that for them. If they have come up, for instance, in this grant, we've partnered with Vallarta Market because they have had offers to pick up some of their food, but even their prepared food doesn't have a place to go because the prepared food is different from, shelf-stable food. It needs to be distributed very quickly. It has special requirements with the kitchens. And so providing this kind of opportunity for them allows them to be able to, instead of disposing it, which nobody wants that, to be able to redistribute it.
Great. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I apologize to my colleagues for taking so much time, but I felt this was so important than just through the, go through the consent calendar. We wanted an explanation, not only to us, but to the community as well. Councilmember Springer.
Yeah, thank you. Great job. Thank you, Mayor Talamantes, for pulling it, just for the comment. But Mr. Rand, thank you. Great job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, let's see here. So we have a motion. I'll accept the motion in a second. Councilmember Frutos. Yes.
Yeah, I'll move the consent forward.
Second.
Councilmember Schultz.
Councilmember Frutos.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Schultz.
Yes.
Councilmember Springer.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Anthony.
Yes.
Mayor Talamantes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are 4 reports to council this evening. The first report is the adoption of an ordinance amending section 4-1-901 of the Burbank Municipal Code relating to the prohibition of the sale of metallic or mylar balloons. Ms. Tiffany Titus, legislative analyst, please present the report.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council members. I am Tiffany Titus. I am the legislative analyst at Burbank Water and Power. Can I please have the PowerPoint presentation brought up? Thank you. This evening, I will present for City Council's consideration the adoption of an ordinance amending the Burbank Municipal Code relating to the prohibition of the sale of mylar balloons in the city of Burbank. First, I wanted to start with a brief description of metallic or mylar balloons. They can also be referred to as celebratory foil balloons, as you see here. The base material is mylar, which is a type of synthetic nylon, and the outer layer is a thin foil, usually aluminum or a metal coating. This metallic exterior of the celebratory foil balloon conducts electricity. So when a celebratory foil balloon floats into an overhead power line, it can cause an electrical fault, blackouts, and sparks that can start fires. Additionally, these balloons are not biodegradable as they are made from a synthetic material and do not break down easily in the environment. These balloons are most commonly filled with helium or air, and they can float over long distances, get tangled in utility lines, and impact electric reliability and put stress on Burbank's electric system. Next slide, please. What we've seen when tracking the causes of utility outages is that Mylar balloons are the #1 cause of outages in Burbank. Since the year 2000, this has resulted in 214 outages, equating to 201 hours of customer interruption. And over the last year, we've seen 8 Mylar balloon caused outages. Next slide, please. Tonight, I have a few Tonight, I have a few pictures of most recent outages caused by Mylar balloons. On November 12th of 2021, BWP had an outage which was caused by Mylar balloons found in our lines. On the left, you can see a picture of the balloons in our lines. And on the right, you can see 743 of our customers and the location that was impacted. For this incident, line crews were deployed and power was quickly restored. Next slide, please. This slide is here to show a prevented outage. This outage would have affected 816 of our customers. Again, Mylar balloons tangled in our utility lines. But luckily, a Burbank resident and customer called after hearing what they thought was an explosion in the vicinity, and line crews were deployed to the area. They found Mylar balloons tangled in the lines, crackling, and they safely removed them. When customers see balloons in the lines, they should stay clear of the pole, get in a safe location, and please call Burbank Water and Power at 818-238-3700. Next slide, please. Currently, the city of Glendale is the only neighboring city to move forward with an ordinance. The city of Pasadena and Los Angeles Department of Water and Power have not taken any action. However, many other California cities have taken action on local bans. This includes the city of Colton, the city of Redondo Beach, the city of Manhattan Beach, city of Hermosa Beach, the city of Lompoc. And the last 2 cities listed on this list, the city of Malibu and the city of Encinitas, have proposed ordinances, but their city council has not formally adopted their ordinance yet. The city councils in the beach cities in Hermosa Beach, Manhattan Beach, and Redondo Beach, located in Southern California Edison's territory, have cited some environmental and beach health concerns with Mylar balloons, as well as latex balloons included in their plastic ban. Next slide, please. Additionally, there has been action taken outside of the state of California to ban the release of Mylar balloons, and I have listed some of those locations here on this slide. Next slide, please. As directed by City Council to continue our advocacy work and collaborate with our neighboring cities on Mylar balloon policy, BWP staff has communicated and met frequently with legislative affairs staff in the city of Glendale, Pasadena, and Los Angeles. Additionally, we work very closely with Southern California Public Power Authority and the California Municipal Utilities Association. And on February 19th of 2021, Mayor Telemontes and Councilmember Schultz, along with City Manager, City Attorney, and Burbank Water and Power's General Manager and staff met with representatives from the Balloon Council to discuss possible options for an ordinance. There were concerns voiced by the Balloon Council relating to the potential impact to businesses, especially on small businesses. And additionally, we discussed current legislative efforts. Next slide, please. Burbank Water and Power has been monitoring Assembly Bill 847, which was introduced by Assemblymember Quirk and sponsored by San Diego Gas and Electric. This bill sets up an approved regulatory process and office for testing of celebratory foil balloons by September 1st of 2024. This bill would also prohibit the sale or manufacture of celebratory foil balloons that do not comply with the regulations by September 1st of 2026. The sponsors of the bill, SDG&E, claim that they have tested, that they're in the testing phase with a U.S. balloon manufacturer to develop and test a balloon that is electrically non-conductive. Negotiations with Assemblymember Quirk and stakeholders are still ongoing, and we have heard that the member is still going to move this bill forward. We have long supported efforts to find workable solutions to mitigate outages. The proposed ordinance before you today does ban metallic or mylar balloons, absent state law or regulation in place today. Next slide, please. The proposed ordinance before City Council was introduced on October 12th of 2021 and is the same ordinance that was adopted by the City of Glendale. It will prohibit the sale of mylar or metallic balloons made of electrically conducted materials filled with helium or gas, which is lighter than air, within the City of Burbank. The proposed ordinance does allow for mylar balloons filled with air only and attached to a fixed post or mounted to a post or a decorative structure at the point of sale. The two pictures on the slide here show what the allowable sale of a mylar balloon would look like. Next slide, please. Should the City Council adopt the proposed ordinance tonight, Burbank Water and Power will provide outreach to the community. Our key accounts managers will reach out directly to impacted businesses and notify them of the new ordinance. We have about 7,000 commercial customers. However, our initial research with very inclusive, broad search of businesses within the City of Burbank likely to sell balloons indicates there's probably less than 300 businesses that we would target in our outreach. And these 300 businesses I'm speaking of, a very overly inclusive search, are pharmacies, drugstores, retail stores, and then the more obvious stores like party stores and flower shops. We will also engage through targeted emails, place an ad in our digital and print currents, post on our social media platforms, and place an ad on our website at burbankwaterandpower.com. Next slide, please. And in conclusion, to continue providing reliable electric service to the Burbank community and to mitigate the risks associated with mylar balloons, staff presents the proposed ordinance for adoption, amending section 4-1-901 of the Burbank Municipal Code relating to the prohibition of the sale of metallic or mylar balloons in the City of Burbank for council consideration. I thank you for your time, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much for your report. Any questions, council members? I don't see none. Thank you very much. Councilmember Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a couple questions for staff about Assembly Bill 847. Nothing too complicated, but I just wanted to make sure its current status is it's on the suspense file. Is that correct?
It was a 2-year bill, and it was placed on hold, so it can be acted upon this month. Last time I checked, it wasn't scheduled for a hearing. We have heard from the lobbyist that Assemblymember Quirk does intend to move the bill forward this session. So there will still be ongoing negotiations and amendments to that bill.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but because it's a 2-year bill, would it not have to be acted upon by the end of this month, January 31st?
Thank you, Councilmember Schultz. Yes, that is correct. It would have to be acted upon by the end of this month.
Okay. And just one last question. If I read the bill and caught it correctly, even if it were to pass, its provisions wouldn't take effect until 2026, if I remember correctly?
Thank you, Councilmember Schultz. Yes, you did read the bill correct. The office that would regulate or put in place the regulations would have to be established by September 1st of 2024. And then the regulations would need to be in place by 2026, September 1st, 2026.
Thank you very much. That's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Springer.
Thank you, Ms. Titus, for your report. So the preferred option is one that's similar to Glendale's, right? Where Mylar balloons are allowed, they're just not allowed to be filled with helium or lighter than air gas. And they must be affixed to, like a stick is what I think, or affix something without gas in them. Is that correct? So the balloons can still be sold, they just won't have the ability to float away and get tangled power line. Is that correct?
Thank you for your question, Councilmember Springer. Mylar balloons cannot be sold unless they are fixed to a post at the point of sale and filled with air only.
Okay.
So we really are looking to mitigate the outages. That's the only allowable sale.
Right. So affixed to something. So could somebody buy a Marlowe on a stick filled with air?
Thank you, Councilmember. Yes. So the two pictures that I showed on the slide would be the allowable usage. Those are to address flower shops, and you saw on the slide there was a flower arrangement with a small Mylar balloon. That balloon would need to be affixed to that post at the point of sale, also filled with air only, not helium. Individual sale is prohibited through the ordinance of Mylar balloons. So this is to address the flower shops. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Titus. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that presentation, Ms. Titus. If I could, the assembly bill that we're talking about, it's basically changing the very materials, or asking rather, retail associations and the balloon companies to change the materials of the Mylar balloons to a non-conductive substance, right? They're not worried about banning or mitigating, regulating the purchase or sale. They're talking about the manufacturing, the actual construction of what that material is. Is that fair to say?
Thank you for the question, Vice Mayor Anthony. Part of the bill is to regulate to set up a regulatory process for non-conductive balloons. Currently, San Diego Gas and Electric has claimed that they're in the testing phase of a balloon that would be non-conductive. However, this regulatory process, when it is set up by September 1st, 2026, electrically conductive balloons that do not pass this regulation or do not pass the test would not be allowable for sale. So it would set up a state regulatory process to manage the manufacture and sell and the types of materials allowed to mitigate the risks of the outages. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. That makes sense, yeah.
Thank you. Councilmember Frutos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in a nutshell, Reader's Digest, we're not preventing the sales of the balloons if they use regular air, as long as it's not helium, to have it float. In our ordinance, right? I'm just trying to keep it very simple here. And the ordinance basically says, hey, if you're gonna sell a Mylar balloon, then it has to be anchored to something, whether it's a weight or something, or if you walk out of the store, it has to be bundled. And I mean, that's what it comes down to. So we're not preventing the sales of any balloons. We're just adding an ordinance that basically has a set of rules when they sell a Mylar balloon, right?
Thank you for the question, Vice Mayor Frutos. Councilmember Frutos.
That's okay. I've been demoted this year, so it's okay.
Thank you for the question, Councilmember. We are banning or prohibiting the sale of Mylar balloons.
Okay, totally.
Yes, within our ordinance, it does say a person, firm, or corporation, it's unlawful for a person, firm, or corporation to sell or offer to sell any Mylar balloons except the allowable demonstration, like I said before, affixed to a post, only filled with air, whether or not the balloon is inflated with helium or gas lighter than air. So it is still prohibited to sell Mylar balloons within the city of Burbank under this ordinance. However, we are allowing the sale for businesses if it is filled with air and attached to a post. That's the only allowable sale for metallic balloons within the city of Burbank under this proposed ordinance for your consideration.
Okay, so a caterer that is setting up a beautiful balloon display, as long as it meets those requirements that you just said, will be able to do business in Burbank.
Yes, of course. And I will also add that many balloon artists and arrangements use latex balloons as well for alternatives for Mylar balloons.
Okay, and in your opinion, has it really impacted Glendale as you were preparing for tonight's agenda item, in your opinion? Or has it kind of worked towards sustainable, better environment, and most important, protecting the utility from power outage, in your opinion, in doing this research?
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Frutos. We did reach out to Glendale, our contacts at Glendale, as well as our partners at the city of Colton. It is very hard to see if their local ordinance has made an impact at reducing the number of outages because these balloons can fly over long distances. Therefore, in LA, you can release a Mylar balloon and it can end up in Burbank's utility lines. So we have reached out to Glendale as well as the city of Colton, and they have not kept any statistical data. They do believe that it has reduced the number of outages. However, they can't speak conclusively because of COVID and the reduction in gatherings and parties and the usage for Mylar balloons. So they are looking to analyze the data in future years and look at how many, if there was a reduction in outages. But at this time, they do not have statistical data.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Titus. Thank you for the report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Titus, real quick, just to piggyback on Councilmember Fruto's question. So archways, like for example, on football fields, they use, sports teams that use archways made up of balloons, are those still be allowed, right?
If they are made out of latex balloons, they are allowable. If they are affixed to a fixed structure and filled with air only, then they are allowable. So the arches, they have to really have that post affixed to them to make sure that they're not going to fly into the air and end up in our utility lines. That's really the intent of this proposed ordinance.
Well, they have weights at both ends. It's the purpose of that is to have the football team or the girls soccer team running through it, just as a decorative piece, obviously. So there's still a lot of questions. I mean, obviously you can, but only if this, or you can't if this happens, but anyway, that's what you're there for, to answer all the questions that somebody might have in regards to that aspect. Councilmember Springer.
Thank you. So if, for example, I think at the grocery store, they have the balloons where somebody can buy one. They will be able to buy a Mylar balloon on a stick filled with air. Is that right? Or if they went into a little gift shop in any little gift shop in Burbank that sells Mylar balloons, they just have to change the way they sell them. It can be filled with air on a stick.
Affixed to a post or a mount, yes.
Okay, because it says that the recommendation is relating to the prohibition of the sale of metallic or Mylar balloons made of electrically conductive materials filled with helium or gas, which is lighter than air within the city of Burbank. So that's what it's doing. It's not eliminating the balloons altogether, the Mylar balloons. It's eliminating the sale of them if they're filled with, they have to be filled with air, right?
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Springer. Yes, they have to be filled with air, and this is a statement of the and, not an or. So filled with air and fixed to a post or a mount.
Okay. And a post could be a stick.
Thank you, Councilmember Springer. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Well, thank you very much for your report. Thank you. Now I'll entertain a motion from my colleagues. Councilmember Schultz.
You know what, Mr. Mayor, I was going to go, but this was the Vice Mayor's agenda item way back when, so I'll give him the first word.
Vice Mayor, you're on.
I appreciate that, Councilmember. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've heard all the arguments on this. I actually had a conversation with Assemblymember Quirk yesterday. He is confident that our ordinance, if it's similar to Glendale's, is not going to impede the state bill moving forward. Again, as Ms. Titus mentioned, it's more of a regulation about the materials, the state bill, and this is much more that conditions, right? You can do Mylar if it's filled with air and it's affixed to something, which, as long as that's happening, they're not going to go into the power lines. So I'm okay moving forward with this. I move that we adopt an ordinance of the Council of the City of Burbank, amending Burbank Municipal Code, Article 9, Section 41901 by adding Article 9, Section 41902, relating to the prohibition of the sale of metallic or Mylar balloons made of electrically conductive materials filled with helium or gas, which is lighter than air, within the City of Burbank.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And Councilmember Schultz seconds it. Okay. Madam City Clerk.
Vice Mayor Anthony? Vice Mayor Anthony?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Yes.
Councilmember Schultz?
Yes.
Councilmember Frutos?
Yes.
Councilmember Springer?
Yes.
And Mayor Talamantes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That carries 5-0. That's what we like to hear, everybody. The next report is the approval of a comment letter to the California High-Speed Rail Authority's final.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Don't mean to interrupt you, sir. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir. Go
May I
ahead.
have the mic?
Oh, yes. Councilmember Frutos.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, on this agenda item, I will have to recuse myself due to the fact that I'm within 1,000 feet of Buena Vista and Van Owen, where the project will be coming. And I definitely own a house and I have interest in what happens with the noise and construction. And so for total transparency and fairness and the integrity of the process, Mr. Mayor, I will have to recuse myself on this agenda item. I'll see you guys at the next agenda item.
Thank you,
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Frutos. Thank you very much for being so transparent. We appreciate that. So the next report is the approval of a comment letter to the California High-Speed Rail Authority's final environmental impact report / environmental impact statement. Mr. David Kriske, Assistant Director of Transportation and Planning, please present the report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. David Kriske with the Community Development Department, and I have a short presentation to help describe the item before you this evening. So I will share my screen. So tonight, the City Council is being asked to submit a comment letter as part of the California High-Speed Rail Authority's potential adoption of a final environmental impact report, final environmental impact statement for the California High-Speed Rail project. This project has been, its environmental process has been many years in the making, and the council has participated in this at earlier stages. And so tonight, I will be giving a brief overview of the high-speed rail project, discussing the authority's final environmental impact report and final environmental impact statement, discuss some further city council comments that the council may wish to present to the authority, and then conclude with our staff's recommendation. So to give an overview quickly of the project, the California High-Speed Rail Project will construct a high-speed train throughout the state of California, connecting the major cities. The main segment would be first constructed in the Central Valley with extensions emanating to the north to San Francisco and to the south to Los Angeles. And the city of Burbank would be in the southern extension of the main project between San Francisco and Los Angeles. And the phasing is generally depicted here, but shows that the Central Valley segment would be opened first. It is under construction now, with extensions to San Francisco following after that, and then south to Los Angeles would be the third phase. Through the city of Burbank, the project would be constructed mostly within existing railroad right-of-way, although there is a new extension and a new tunnel proposed near the Hollywood Burbank Airport. But this map shows that the alignment would come out of the north-south Valley Line Railroad that goes from Los Angeles to the Palmdale area. It would divert south towards the airport and then transition into the Coastline Railroad, which is the line that extends from Los Angeles to the Ventura area, before resuming travel in the north-south direction through downtown Burbank and exiting the city near Alameda Avenue. Coming into the city, the high-speed rail project would be in a tunnel and would extend, as I said, near the site of the future Hollywood Burbank Airport terminal, located where the current Avion development is, and a proposed station would be constructed at the site of the Avion project. And that site would be converted into a station, parking lots, and other features of a high-speed rail station. And there would be a direct connection to the future airport terminal. Proceeding south from the new station, the project is proposed to be constructed in a cut-and-cover tunnel, except where it is tunneling underneath the airport east-west runway for the Hollywood Burbank Airport. That would be a bored tunnel. And then the project would continue in a tunnel and bend from south to east and come out of the tunnel approximately between Hollywood Way and Buena Vista Street along Van Owen Street. The project would propose a new railroad underpass for the high-speed rail project below Buena Vista Street at Van Owen. But what's notable is the existing at-grade crossing, where the city recently implemented a quiet zone, would remain at grade. Further east, the project would construct a new railroad overpass above Victory Place. It would be built adjacent to the existing rail bridge that exists today. That bridge would not be modified as part of the project. Further south, the project would be transition from below grade to at grade, and near the Burbank Boulevard Bridge would be at grade. The Burbank Boulevard Bridge would need to be demolished and reconstructed. That's not the bridge we just built and opened a month ago. It's the portion of the bridge that goes over the railroad tracks and connects to 5 Points, which is depicted here. And then finally, exiting the city at Alameda, a new widened railroad overpass would be constructed above and next to the existing railroad overpass at Alameda Avenue, which is shown here. Through downtown Burbank, the project would be constructed at grade, so at the surface it would be constructed next to the existing Metrolink and freight railroad lines, and would require demolition of property to the west of the existing tracks. This shows a very crude projection of how the high-speed rail would be constructed through the existing Metrolink station and underneath the existing Magnolia and Olive overpasses. And then to the lower right, you can see a diagram of potential connectivity and connections that the project would need to construct to reconfigure the existing Metrolink station, platforms, and crossings to accommodate the high-speed rail station. The project is expected to take approximately 9.5 years to build. The high-speed rail doesn't set a start date for construction because major portions of this project are still not funded. However, the environmental document does show a construction duration of approximately 9.5 years to construct this segment of the project. So the council may recall that in July of 2020, Council approved staff to send a comment letter to the High Speed Rail Authority as part of the draft environmental impact report that was released in 2020. That comment letter included a number of comments that staff recommended and the council agreed they wish the High Speed Rail Authority to look at as part of the environmental document. Here is a listing of some of the major issues that the council sent to the authority, particularly the insufficient range of project alternatives along the part of the alignment through Burbank, the fact that construction impacts were not fully disclosed, the fact that the project does exacerbate the division of established neighborhoods by expanding and widening existing rail corridors. It eliminates TOD, transit-oriented development opportunities, particularly in downtown. There were concerns over noise and vibration impacts that were not mitigated, and that we felt that there were public infrastructure impacts that were not fully addressed in the draft environmental document. So subsequent to the draft environmental impact report being released in 2020, and the City Council and others sending comment letters as part of that draft environmental impact report, the High Speed Rail Authority, as required by environmental law, collected and reviewed all of the comments received as part of the draft environmental impact report process, and has now prepared a final environmental impact report and final environmental impact statement. And as an aside, the reason I have these two terms is because this project is subject to both California as well as federal law, and there are two related documents for both state and federal law. That final environmental impact report was released in November of this year, of last year, of 2021. It includes all of the comments received during the draft environmental report period. It includes responses from the authority for all the comments received as part of the draft. And in some cases, the final environmental impact report proposes changes to the project or changes to mitigations in the project in response to the comments received as part of the draft. So the big question for consideration this evening is, did and how did the authority respond to the city's comments that were communicated as part of the draft environmental impact report? And what staff's analysis of the final environmental impact report showed was that they indeed did clarify some of the city's transportation analysis comments and questions. They did clarify how they arrived at some of their assumptions and how some of the transportation impacts of the project were arrived at we believe to our satisfaction. They did change the project and the mitigation measures of the project to reduce impacts to existing and future bicycle transportation facilities, particularly in and around downtown Burbank. However, staff does not believe that the authority still did not fully address the city's construction impact concerns. And this is a big issue as the city begins to come out of the I-5 construction period. And we have a lot of lessons learned about how those impacts should be planned, disclosed up front. And we feel that the document from the High Speed Rail Authority still does not fully address the city's concerns with relation to how construction impacts are dealt with, particularly in terms of street closures, damages to streets, detours. The breadth of construction of this project really requires that those impacts and plans for detours be disclosed and fully planned up front rather than closer to project construction. Staff believes the authority still did not adequately respond to noise and vibration concerns, particularly around the area where the tunnel transitions into a below and at grade facility along the residential neighborhoods along Van Owen Street and eastward of Buena Vista. The document identifies that there are noise and vibration impacts in these areas, but doesn't identify the mitigations that they propose to deploy to address them. They basically point to a kind of a programmatic document that says, when we get to that point in construction, we'll evaluate what we can do to mitigate and we'll do what we can, but they don't disclose fully what they plan to do to mitigate those noise impacts up front. And we think that that is an important thing that they should address. The authority did not respond to the city's request to consider more of the alignment to be below grade. And we think that by doing considering more of the alignment to be below grade, particularly by these noise impacted areas. That could be a way to mitigate the impacts to those adjacent land uses by considering whether to keep more of the alignment below grade. And the authority responded and said that they felt that they adequately presented a range of alternatives for this stretch and did not need to further evaluate options in this area. The authority did not respond to concerns about dividing neighborhoods or reconsider options to build infrastructure in a less divisive manner. And what I mean by this comment is in many places, the authority is adding more infrastructure that further divides parts of Burbank along existing rail corridors. And we think that this is an opportunity for them, if they are going to build in that way, that they reconstruct not only high-speed rail infrastructure, but local conventional rail infrastructure to lessen that division. So, for example, at Buena Vista Street, where they are creating the below-grade high-speed rail crossing, we think that they should also depress the conventional trains. We think it's an opportunity to make an overall improvement to the corridor to lessen this divisive impact caused by the project. And sorry, my presentation is auto-advancing. And so I'm trying to push it back. The letter did not address concerns about loss of TOD around downtown Burbank. A lot of land use near the station and south of the station will be demolished as part of the project and will be needed for a surface expansion of the railroad, high-speed rail tracks along the existing railroad. And there's still unresolved questions concerning damage to city infrastructure, and we believe that the authority did not identify the electrical demands on our utility for the new station. And we think that's important to disclose up front, so most importantly, so we can prepare for that. So based upon what we feel the final EIR did and did not do in terms of addressing the city's comments, staff recommends the City Council approve the attached FEIS comment letter, which is attachment 1 to your staff report. This letter provides further comments and clarifies concerns regarding the remaining city issues. And we request that you direct staff to send this to the authority ahead of the authority's January 19th board meeting, where they have on their agenda a consideration to certify or approve the final environmental impact report and to approve the project alignment for this section. And then based upon the authority's decision and how they address or don't address the remaining city comments, the city council at that point would have the option to consider legal action if we felt that the way they did or did not address impacts was running afoul of environmental law. So with that, the city staff's recommendation is for the city council to approve the attached comment letter, and of course to provide any additional comments that you wish to be included in that, and to direct staff to submit the letter ahead of the January 19th, 2022 California High-Speed Rail Authority meeting. And that concludes my presentation. I am available for comments. I would also note, as I believe the council is aware, there was a letter submitted to the city council by the California High-Speed Rail Authority addressing and further responding to some of the concerns raised tonight. And that item, I believe, was distributed to the city council as part of the agenda tonight. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Kriski. Colleagues, any questions to Mr. Kriski? Comments? Councilmember Schultz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So first of all, Mr. Kriski, thank you for the excellent presentation. My first question is, I actually wanted to pick up right where you left off. I saw that correspondence from High Speed Rail Authority today, and I just wanted to know if staff had any comment or response to that letter, the latest correspondence from them.
Yes, of course, we also reviewed the letter, and I definitely will acknowledge the first part of the letter talking about how they have been coordinating with the city over the years. As I mentioned, this has been a big endeavor, many years in the making, have been working collaboratively with the city in several areas. I think the two biggest ones have been first to locate the station at the airport. The city council has not taken a position on this project. However, they have taken a position on where any station should be located, should this be built, and it was that the station should be at the airport. And in response to that, this was many years ago, the authority did relocate the station to the point next to the airport, which is what's in the final document. So that was one good way where they collaborated. In another area that was notable, while our comment letter talks about potentially having a lack of alternatives for looking at what the corridor is like along Van Owen and along the stretch between Hollywood Way and Buena Vista and then further east to Victory. We do have concerns about that. However, the overall response in terms of alignment is they eliminated an aerial alignment that was earlier proposed that would have been an aerial structure, basically just bisecting the whole city, which I think would have been far worse. The alternative that's in the document that's up for approval has more of the alignment underground, has more of the alignment below grade. So I think that is an improvement. I think staff's concern is that while they maybe got 2/3 of the way there, the last really concern that we have about how that alignment really is built is missing a lot of opportunity in some of the ways I described. And so that's where we are still, at least the staff is still differing with the authority. And then one other point, they do talk about how introducing high-speed rail into an existing urban rail corridor will improve safety for all the rail, including the existing. I have a little bit of a disagreement with that because of the fact that they're not touching any of the conventional rail in the ways that I just talked about. They could say that if they were putting the conventional trains in the trench with them under Buena Vista, for example, because then everything's being improved. But they're not doing those sorts of things, and that's kind of the big issue and the theme, I think one of the major themes of the staff's comments before you this evening.
Thank you very much. I just had one more question and then a quick comment, and then I'll be done, Mr. Mayor. So my next question, Mr. Christie, it might be for you. It might be answered in part by the city attorney, but I wanted to ask it because it was a question I got from one of our residents, one of our neighbors, and I'm assuming other people might be wondering the same thing. So the EIS-EIR contemplates, you said, about 9.5 years for construction, right? And most of this segment of the project isn't funded yet. We don't know when it's going to break ground. So I guess the question that I can think of putting in the simplest terms is, if the EIS-EIR is certified and the project doesn't break ground for, say, 20 years, at any point in time, would the authority be required to reassess or reevaluate the environmental impacts? Or once this is done, has the train left the station, so to speak?
So I think Mr. McDougall will be best able to answer this, but I will say that although there is opportunity for projects that are environmentally reviewed and then are built many years later, sometimes if there are changing environmental circumstances, they may be required to reevaluate the project. But I will also say that, again, back to our favorite I-5 project, a perfect example of an environmental document that was completed in 2001 and really was not modified in any substantial way until until we broke ground, 15 years later, 13 years later. In that case, that was not modified. So Mr. McDougall can probably give you some good insight onto the legal reasons why they may or may not be able to do subsequent environmental review. But I do know that we have an example with the I-5, which did not get further reviewed in a major way and was built much later.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. To respond to Councilmember Schultz's question, there is a test under the California Environmental Quality Act. It's called subsequent or supplemental review under CEQA guidelines, section 15162. Basically, if there are changes to the project or there are changes to the circumstances underlying the project, or there is new information that wasn't known at this time that comes to light in the future, those are all grounds to require additional review. Generally, that test is made by the lead agency being High Speed Rail Authority. The City of Burbank is actually a responsible agency. Mr. Kriske made reference to legal action. As a responsible agency, the city is required to use the High Speed Rail Authority's legal document unless we somehow challenge it as being inadequate or unless we determine that our authority requires us to undertake supplemental or subsequent environmental review. So if the High Speed Rail Authority were to certify this document and start in January and start construction, say, in 2022, and come to us for permits that we are required under our code to do construction in the right-of-way owned and managed by the city, then that would be such a tight time frame that there probably wouldn't be any changes to the project or changes to the environment that would necessitate that review. However, if it takes the High Speed Rail Authority 10 or 15 years to get the funding, to tunnel under the mountains, to come into the San Fernando Valley, and then apply for permits, the likelihood that there could be nesting birds, the likelihood that traffic conditions could change, or that their 100% design indicates they plan their construction phasing to block emergency access across the entire Ventura rail corridor so that Burbank wouldn't be able to get emergency vehicle access north or south of Van Owen for an extended period of time, then the city may have to undertake subsequent environmental review before it can approve of the High Speed Rail Authority's contractors to cut into and close down Burbank streets. So it could affect infrastructure, potable water, the Burbank Operable Unit, all of these. There are many pieces of infrastructure that go into this. Now, that wouldn't necessarily, the permits issued by Burbank don't go to noise, right? If there's a noise impact that could be solved, that would be beyond our encroachment permit. So it could be, and this comment is in the comment letter toward the end on page attachment 1-7, it's quite likely that between approval and between construction, and Mr. Kriski, are they at 30% design?
They're like at 5% design, 15%, very low, very early.
So with 95% design left, it's likely, and this current environmental and infrastructure period that we're in is very different from, say, the prior 20 years that Caltrans was working in. Caltrans also did they already own the right-of-way within which they did much of the work. They applied for a master encroachment permit for areas outside their alignment. The High Speed Rail Authority has yet to acquire much of this right-of-way and will have to do massive relocation of both existing owners and land uses and tenants, as well as relocation of infrastructure. So I would say that the amount of design work, acquisition work, and relocation, utility relocation work is substantial and could likely trigger that kind of review. So it could be premature to solve all of these, and some of the responses that they gave, or they're logical in some respects, that until they fully design, they might not know whether a certain stormwater infrastructure, it also parallels portions of the Lockheed Channel, which is a primary kind of southeasterly drainage that drains behind the airport and behind the whole Empire Center. They might not know the extent of their impacts, so they will have to identify some of that in the future. And so, to make my long explanation longer, yes, there are triggers, and we'll likely be in that position by the time they come through with 100, even 90% design.
Okay, well, thank you both for the explanation. That was the point I wanted to make. I think because this is an unfunded project, it's something that we're going to have to continue to monitor. The story is certainly not done on this. The last comment that I'll just make is, Mr. Kriski, you and your staff, I think, did a great job with the proposed letter. I'm supportive of it. The only thing I just wanted to echo, I don't know that it goes in the comment letter, but I think Councilmember Frutos was spot on. I don't think that the outreach that the authority have done is sufficient. Many of our neighbors are not aware of the far-reaching impacts this project might have. So if there's a way to convey that sentiment to the authority, they need to really engage with our community so people are aware that this is happening. That's all I have. Thank you, colleagues, for letting me start us out the gate.
Thank you, Councilmember Schultz. Vice Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Kriski, for that letter. I am in support of the letter and the wording that you've put together. You and I have had many conversations about high-speed rail, even back when I was on the Transportation Commission. Speaking of, we did get an email from former chair of the Burbank Transportation Commission, Paul Dyson. Basically, in summation, he's asking, why aren't we pushing for the station to be downtown? And is that even on the table? What are the feasibilities of that, or is it pointless to try to do that?
Yes, Mr. Vice Mayor, as I briefly alluded to, one of the concessions the authority did make early on was to have the station be at the airport rather than in downtown, and that was at the request of the then city council, who thought that a large piece of infrastructure like an airport, meaning that the number of people arriving and departing the high-speed rail station is going to be like a small airport. They felt that that was too much intensity in downtown, and they felt that having that intensity by the airport and also offer the connectivity to the airport was a better choice for Burbank. And so they did make the council at the time did make the comment to ask that the airport station be considered rather than a downtown station, which was originally in the plans. So that's what the authority has been planning towards. There are many good reasons to have the airport and the high-speed rail station connected. And because of the magnitude of the infrastructure that needs to go in, the airport is an area, I think that the airport area is a place where I think that can be more accounted for and planned rather than trying to kind of shoehorn it into downtown Burbank Metrolink station and making that a very intense hub. Obviously, there would be an argument for putting it right in the core of downtown for other reasons, but this council previously very strongly, the one thing they did say was we think that it should be located at the airport, and the High-Speed Rail Authority did make that change.
Okay. If for some reason this current council would want to move that station, do you feel, and I know we've talked about this, you and I, but can you give us some pros and cons against that? Just because I know some people are watching and they'd want to have a big busy hub downtown rather than all the way at the airport.
So I think the downsides to having the station in downtown are that it would be very difficult to connect it to downtown. So while you would have it right next to downtown, many of the issues that we're bringing up in our comment letter about how the project is exacerbating the ability to cross the freeway and the tracks and connect our transit infrastructure to downtown, I feel like that would probably be exacerbated by trying to further shoehorn an even larger high-speed rail station into downtown. While it is hopeful that we build high-speed rail in a very transit-rich way so that you're not driving to high-speed rail, where hopefully you're taking local transit to get to high-speed rail to go to San Francisco. We're doing it wrong if you're driving to high-speed rail to then get on the train. But the fact of the matter remains is probably in the early stages of enveloping this infrastructure into our overall transportation network, we're probably going to have it's going to operate kind of like an airport. And so you're going to have, I think, more intensity of traffic and transportation in a constrained area of downtown. And I think that would be the main downside of having the station in downtown, particularly our downtown, where we have the station on the wrong side of the freeway to everything else. And so I think that would probably be the main downside to having it in downtown Burbank.
And looking forward with microtransit, Uber, Lyft, via these short little drives, we would rather, as a city, direct that kind of traffic to an area where, say, the airport is already dealing with that kind of issue, rather than what we're trying to do, walkable, bikeable downtown, instead of these, cars coming in and dropping people off.
Right, and not to say that the airport station, we are still working to make it walkable, bikeable, transit rich, and that's part of why the authority and Metro is funding our Golden State specific plan, which my planning colleagues will be bringing to the council this calendar year. So it requires a lot of new infrastructure. It would be hard to shoehorn in downtown, but it's at the same time an opportunity that we're building lots of new infrastructure, and so we can plan for it and make it really progressive and integrated at the airport to make it like what you're talking about, connected by transit, walking and biking, and having people potentially even live near there.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Kriske. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Springer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Kriske, for your report. What is meant by a cut and cover tunnel?
So a cut and cover tunnel is one in which you excavate a trench to build the tunnel, put in the tracks, and then you cover it to make it a tunnel. And so it's in contrast to a kind of a boring tunnel where you have like a big boring machine that's kind of just drilling underneath everything to create a tunnel. The cut and cover is a little more disruptive because you're kind of digging out a big trench and then covering it later versus a tunnel boring where it's just a machine that's kind of going underneath everything and it's a little bit more constrained.
Which is more expensive to do?
I don't have that information. I'm not certain what the cost benefit or cost differences between the two are.
Okay. And so when we saw this before, we wanted it it seems like I remember we wanted it like in a trench, like most of the way through Burbank, right?
Yes, we think that one of the comments in our letter is that although they analyzed a lot of alternatives, and that is true, the particular alternative section along the coastline that along Buena Vista, Hollywood Way, Victory, they didn't sufficiently study enough ways that they could construct that portion to mitigate some of the noise and vibration and community division impacts. And one of those options that they could study is keeping that train in a trench further, instead of just coming out of the tunnel by Hollywood Way and immediately just starting to rise up to be at grade.
Right, because how long has this been going on? I went to a high-speed rail, informational thing maybe 15 years ago, and it was all in trenches. The train, because it's a high-speed train, it needs to be in a trench because it'll throw off the ballast. It goes too fast. I don't know how fast it's going to go through Burbank, but it looks like most of it is at grade. And so I object to that, but I think you've covered that in your comment letter, in that more of it should be underground. So do you know when did HSR start thinking about this high-speed rail? I'm just curious.
Well, there was a program EIR, which is an environmental document to study the whole project at a high level. That was way back in 2005. So that's how long the main planning's been going. The more detailed planning with the alignments and kind of probably where you saw trenches versus aerial structure versus at grade, that was probably around 2010 to now. So the early 2010s is when that was kind of being discussed.
Okay, and so they expect Avion to be at the end of its economic life by the time it's feasible, everything is in place, it's funded, it's planned.
Well, what they're assuming is that Avion will need to be condemned and will need to be cleared for the construction of the station and also for construction of the project itself. So they've basically included that as an additional acquisition that's one of many acquisitions. So what would happen if the authority moved forward and received funding for this segment and began right-of-way acquisition is they'd be beginning the right-of-way acquisition and condemnation process, which involves appraising, figuring out what the value is, figuring out what compensation is, and then going through the legal steps to acquire the property.
Okay. And on this, I have a question about their proposed modified Metrolink station, because the high-speed train won't stop in Burbank, right? It'll just go through?
Correct.
So here, the modified Metrolink station and these grade, is that where the train will be in a trench?
The upper left is my crude drawing, so I apologize. And the gray bars represent where predominantly the two tracks would be located at grade. And so they would be built at grade immediately to the west of the existing tracks. The existing Metrolink station would have to be modified. The parking lot would be reconfigured, reconstructed. The Americold site would be condemned. And they would be building pedestrian elevators and bridges to get people across all of the platforms, both low speed and high speed rail. So one of the comments we had related to dividing communities and impacting infrastructure is we think that whole connectivity needs to be thought out a lot better, because without doing some real thoughtful work on how we connect and get people across all of this stuff, you're creating a further division of downtown. And they're proposing some pedestrian crossings and elevators, but as you look in that little drawing and think of yourself trying to walk, maneuver through Olive Bridge down to the station, then up the elevator, it's very disruptive and circuitous, and not in the manner of trying to connect all of this transit together, which is something we've been fighting to do for so long.
Right. And so for the modified Metrolink station, in my opinion, it would be best for that to be in a trench, a cut and cover. And so then if it's covered, it would be like it's not there, right? Since it doesn't stop. And then the Americold wouldn't have to be condemned. We could do the Burbank Commons there, because we're really kind of annexing this part of downtown Burbank into downtown with 777 front. And then this would just kind of ruin it.
Yeah, I mean, the authority has kind of made the argument that in response to that is, well, you've already got, a freeway and a surface train. And so how much worse are we making it by adding another set of surface tracks to an situation that's already bad? But what I would argue is you're exacerbating what's already there, when in fact you could use this as an opportunity to make improvements along some of the lines you're talking about, or some of the connectivity that we've all been talking about in terms of Olive Bridge, Magnolia Bridge, and all of that. I think this is an opportunity throughout the corridor to really make high-speed rail a better neighbor with the other rail to make improvements. And it's something that is not covered in the environmental document, and is something that we try to address in our comment letter. And it's something that the council, if they approve this letter, would be communicating to the board.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I mean, I really think the whole thing should be cut and cover through Burbank, and so people could walk over the top of it, and it could be park space, or the Metrolink parking lot, or Burbank Commons. We wouldn't even really know it's there, and it wouldn't be so divisive. And then we could have a master plan for Magnolia and Olive Bridge for that connectivity. And so this picture right here, where you have project construction, 9.5 years, where is that?
I believe that is along San Fernando. It may even be just outside the city, but that's what a trench would look like if it were in a more continuous fashion. Our trench would look like that along Hollywood Way in Van Owen, but then in Buena Vista, but then it would start elevating back out to the surface, say behind Costco or behind Empire Center. And the existing rail tracks would not be in that trench, which we think is another missed opportunity. Put everything in the trench, but they're not proposing to do that. They're proposing to leave the existing tracks pretty much how they all are today. At Victory Place, you could combine both conventional and high-speed rail into one nice new bridge over Victory Place, another bottleneck that we've dealt with for many years. But instead, they're proposing to build a new bridge, but leave the 100-year-old ancient bridge with all of its problems right next to it. And we think it's another missed opportunity.
Right. I'm with you. Put everything in one trench and cover it as much as possible wherever we can. Because now there is, talk about covering freeways. For example, the 134. And so why not just do it now? Cover the rail and cover the trench, and it's like a covered or capped freeway, and we can use it, and it's not divisive. So we'll have, what happens next? Like they'll come back, or they'll ignore us, or what?
So we're kind of we are at the end of the environmental process. We're not at the end of the project process. The High-Speed Rail Authority will consider whether they want to certify the final environmental impact report and say we, as a board, agree with the findings of the EIR and the changes that we've made and how we've addressed or not addressed everybody's comments, and then approve the project. Alternatively, they could look at what has been documented in the FEIR and some of the concerns raised by stakeholders along the corridor and could decide to do further modifications. It's really up to the authority board to make that decision. And then at that point, if they were to approve the project, then they would ostensibly begin design activities and potentially some acquisition, but I don't think they have a whole lot of funding, as was mentioned, to really get too far on this stretch. But the project would be environmentally approved and would be, at least from an environmental standpoint, could be constructed unless there were some caveats, as Mr. McDougall pointed out earlier.
So that's where the legal action comes in, right?
The legal action or the political action, meaning, engaging with the board and with other elected officials to say, here, these are our concerns, and this is why we think that the project should be modified to make it better for Burbank.
Okay, and so meanwhile, we just is that why Burbank Commons has not moved forward?
No, Burbank Commons is still being reviewed with the proposer, but there have been, as the council knows, some changes in how the city is required to look at excess property, and so that's kind of delayed the project, that particular project.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you very much for your report and your comment letter, and wow, what a colossal impact to Burbank. And I think we just should stay firm and put it in trenches, all the railroad tracks, and with as little remaining impact after it's constructed, and minimize it while it's constructed, if it ever is constructed. So thank you. That's all, Mayor Talamantes.
Thank you, Councilmember Springer. Any other comments? Mr. Krisky, you mentioned in your report something about dividing neighborhoods. Can you explain that to me?
Yes, so one of the environmental things or issues that in documents look at are how projects, particularly transportation projects, have the ability to divide existing neighborhoods or further divide existing neighborhoods. So it's a land use impact. So if a project's going to create barriers between one side of a community and another, that's an impact that needs to be disclosed in the environmental document and that potentially needs to be mitigated or shown that it can't be mitigated. And so what we've made in the argument we've made in the comment letter is that the project is, while it is being built in an existing rail corridor, the manner in which it's being constructed is further exacerbating that division, and that the project did not sufficiently look at ways that changing how it's built could lessen that, and perhaps like some of the issues were raised in terms of keeping more of it in a trench, bringing the conventional trains down into a trench with it, that sort of thing to lessen that land use impact.
Okay, I'm picturing the property on the railroad from Hollywood Way to Buena Vista. I mean, it's already divided, right? I mean, obviously, so how would they further divide the neighborhood?
So they're adding 2 extra tracks, so you're going from 2 tracks to 4.
Okay.
And while you are constructing high-speed rail underneath Buena Vista in a trench rising to grade, the existing tracks in the existing rail corridor are remaining at grade. And so you've got a high-speed rail in a trench next to an existing rail crossing that has all of its issues, when a better way to address that further intensification of that rail corridor going from 2 to 4 is to make everything a little bit better and putting all the trains, for instance, below grade, or having all the trains cross below Buena Vista rather than having the conventional trains and the high-speed rail trains separate.
Okay, but you still have that crossing there at Buena Vista, right? I mean, we have that quiet zone there now that existed for years and years and years. So you say that by doing what they are proposing, it would divide the neighborhoods even more?
Further divide, it would intensify the existing division, yes.
Okay. All right, any other comments, colleagues? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that we approve the proposed comment letter to the California High-Speed Rail Authorities and final environmental impact report / environmental impact statement, and that we direct staff to submit it prior to the Authority Board of Directors meeting on January 19th.
Councilmember Springer, did you second that?
I did.
There you go. You were muted. I saw your head going like this, so. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other comments? Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before you vote, I just wanted to note that what we would have if you did vote in the affirmative, we would actually have all four of you sign that prior to the 19th, and we would exclude Councilmember Frutos just because he did recuse himself. So just want to let you know that.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk?
Councilmember Schultz?
Yes.
Councilmember Springer?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Anthony?
Yes.
And Mayor Talamantes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's see here. The next report is the request to consider writing a letter supporting the Our Neighborhood Voices Initiative. Ms. Vivia Garzon, Administrative Analyst in the City Manager's Office, please present the report. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Talamantes, Vice Mayor Anthony, and members of the City Council.
Let's take a moment here to let Councilmember Frutos back in. You're on? Okay, good. Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Garzon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Talamantes, Vice Mayor Anthony, and members of the City Council. Viviana Garzon, Administrative Analyst with the City Manager's Office. Per Council Member Springer's request at a previous City Council meeting, I am here tonight to present a first step report for Council consideration of writing a letter in support of the Our Neighborhood Voices Initiative. The initiative is a proposed amendment to the California Constitution. If approved, the initiative would add a section to the Constitution providing that city and county land use, zoning, and housing laws shall prevail over a conflicting state law. The initiative does not let cities or counties undo the broader laws, such as the California Environmental Quality Act, the Coastal Act of 1976, and the California Fair Employment and Housing Act, among others. The initiative is being proposed by the Our Neighborhood Voices Coalition. According to the website, the coalition's priority is to reclaim local zoning control. The coalition has until the end of April to collect 1 million valid signatures from registered state voters to get the initiative on the November 8th ballot. To date, many community leaders, organizations, and communities have endorsed the initiative. These include the cities of Anaheim, Beverly Hills, El Segundo, Manhattan Beach, Redondo Beach, and Torrance, as well as the Southern California Association of Governments and the California Contract Cities Association. This evening, City Council can direct staff in one of three ways. Note and file this report, come back for a second step, or, in the interest of time, forego the second step in the additional agenda item process and direct staff to prepare and send a letter signed by all 5 council members supporting the Our Neighborhood Voices initiative. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for the report. And my colleagues, I just want to recommend that we go ahead and bypass the second step and go right to the final step, because I believe this is time sensitive and very important that we move forward on this. Councilmember Frutos.
Mr. Mayor, make the motion and I'll second it. Let's move this. I agree with you.
Okay, let's see where it is, right here. Recommend that City Council, well, okay, so I move that we go ahead and agree with staff's recommendation to go ahead and write a letter, agree with Councilmember Springer's recommendation that we write a letter supporting our Neighborhood Voices initiative.
Second.
And this for discussion real quick, this is something that all of my years that I've been on council, I've been fighting for. Local control. We need local control. But somehow Sacramento tends to ignore us and just do their own thing. There are certain representatives at the state level that don't care what Burbank thinks, don't care what the San Fernando Valley thinks, don't care about our local control. But I've been advocating and fighting for local control all the years that I've been on council. As representative of LA County Division, I was president of the LA County Division of the League of California Cities that represents 88 cities in LA County. So we must have it, we have to have it. So there's a motion, Madam City Clerk, go ahead.
Mayor Talamantes?
Yes.
Councilmember Frutos?
Is there any discussion on this, or?
If you wish, go ahead, Vice Mayor Anthony.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Mr. McDougall a few questions on what what might happen with this. So just real quick, this is a constitutional amendment that's going to the state, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
So in theory, it would be able to bring back power even from parts of the state constitution that have taken away local control. Is that true, or would it only refer to things passed by the legislator and signed by the governor, not constitutional amendments?
Well, there aren't, I'd need a more specific reference. The Constitution provides authority for cities and local government. So our power as a charter city is derived from the Constitution. So the city's charter has the effect of state law, except as where the legislature determines a matter to be a matter of statewide concern and therefore preempts us.
So my question is, would this, if I could give you some specifics, do you know, would it affect Article 34 or Prop 13?
No, because Prop 13 is not a land use regulation. So this constitutional amendment is very specific as to establishes, so they list all kinds of different municipal actions, charter, general plan, specific plan, ordinance, or regulation adopted pursuant to a city charter that establishes land use policies or regulates zoning or development standards within the boundaries of the city shall be deemed a municipal affair. So that does not affect taxation.
Okay.
So it wouldn't affect Prop 13?
Article 34, it's in the Constitution that you can't build public or social housing in a vicinity without a vote by the electorate. Would this preclude that as well?
Well, that provision is a little bit nuanced. It doesn't, it specifically refers to public housing projects. It's not affordable housing projects, and there are quite a few exemptions. So 100% tax credit finance projects are not subject to Article 34. So let me say, I think this bill is a great idea. But, for instance, some of the literature references SB 10. SB 10 is permissive. So SB 10 is not a mandate on local government. It is authority for local governments to increase development. For instance, timing is also a factor. So there's reference to, say, the state's density bonus law. Well, the way the density bonus law gets implemented is through city adoption. So the city has already adopted the state density bonus law, so there's actually a local law on density bonus which incorporates the state density bonus law by reference. So how exactly this bill interplays with that is a question yet to be determined. As well, the state planning and zoning law, which is the core of our local land use, how we do our local land use, the city has incorporated by reference almost the entirety of the planning and zoning law, except for the limitation on cities amending the general plan more than 4 times a year. Burbank can adopt the general plan as many times as it wants in a year. It does so about every 40 years. Well, except for, specific projects. So how this bill plays out is kind of yet to be determined. I think in large measure, it should have a prospective effect, meaning there will probably be fewer legislative enactments trying to further trim the city's home rule, knowing that this language is in here. But in terms of any retrospective effect, because the city has adopted many state law enactments as its local law, it's really complex to determine exactly what effect it would have. Another example I would give you is staff may be presenting to the council an ordinance to deal with SB 9. And it's to make sure that how SB 9 gets implemented would be sensible right? In accord with, say, our ability to support project with infrastructure, et cetera. SB 9 has a tremendous preemptive effect, but long before this bill even gets certified to be placed on the ballot, Burbank may have already dealt with, in some measure, that SB 9. So I don't know that there will necessarily be automatic effect, but I'm very confident that there will probably be a prospective effect on further preemption of local law. So that's just my commentary as I've thought about how this bill could affect it. Largely, I think it may end up being prospective unless we drill into very specific provisions to see how the city has already incorporated them into our Burbank Municipal Code.
Then lastly, our Burbank Municipal Code makes no reference to any sort of rent control or rent regulation. Would this supersede, say, Costa-Hawkins or the Ellis Act or the recent, the 2020 statewide rent control law?
None of those provisions relate to zoning or development standards.
Okay.
So
it's
my
not,
opinion,
it's not about housing so much as the zoning.
it's, as I read the bill in front of me, I'm sorry, the measure that is moving through the process, it is land use policies or regulates zoning or development. So no, those issues you brought up do not appear on the face to be affected by this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Schultz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And, thank you to staff for the presentation. I appreciate the eagerness to move this forward. I agree with our city attorney's words. I think this is a really good idea, and it's something that I am supportive, but I'd be remiss if I didn't make two observations. Personally, and this is just a matter of practice, I like to see the letter that we're sending before I vote on it, so I know what it is that I am signing off on. So as a matter of practice, that's number one. And number two, I think we're all in agreement here, but I also think we have an opportunity to send a powerful message to Sacramento in addition to just supporting the initiative. One of my personal complaints is that Sacramento funnels through legislation without really doing its homework and really understanding the broad range of impacts that legislation might have. Even though this is a good thing, and I think we're all in agreement on that, there are some questions that I have. I mean, even looking at the fact sheet, for example, it talks about there could be impacts on, and this is on page 2 of 3, impacts on housing element requirements. So one question I might have is, would there be impacts if this were to pass on safety elements of the general plans as it applies to different communities, which could inform our response to wildfire risk and seismic hazard? So while I am supportive of the motion in principle, and my preference would be, and I guess I'm offering a friendly amendment, Mr. Mayor, I would like to go through our normal process of a second step, just so that we could bring it back in a meeting or two. We could see the letter in its entirety, and perhaps staff could just do what I feel like Sacramento doesn't often do. And that is, we could have all the facts, have a fuller assessment of the impacts of this bill, so that perhaps we have more talking points to put into the letter. I don't mean to suggest that I'm not supportive of the motion in principle. I'm with you in spirit. I just think that the way that we get there can also send a really powerful message to Sacramento. And so that would be my friendly amendment, Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. City staff may have an understanding of this. If we do our regular one-step, two-step, is it possible to bring this back in 2 weeks? And is that enough time to get it in place and have it heard by the people who need to get this letter from us?
Well, we don't meet next week, which is the 18th. Our next meeting is the
2 weeks.
25th. So that's in 2 weeks. City Manager Hess?
Yeah, as far as timing, I would recommend if we couldn't get it on for the next council meeting, we would definitely be able to get it on for I think it's February 8th at the latest. So if we could at least have 2 meetings, we could definitely get it on. And I think we still meet any time crunch at that point. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I would be okay with. I mean, I'm supportive of it mostly because the last 10 years of housing policy from Sacramento has been all stick and no carrot, right? Cities that are doing the right thing, we don't get redevelopment funds, we don't get tax incentives, we don't get any breaks. for following. So I think this sends a good message saying, look, if we play ball, you got to change what you're doing and help us out. So I am supportive of this. I would like to really drill into, what laws this would affect, where in our code we can take advantage of this if it comes through. So if we could rush it to 2 weeks from now, but at least have that second step, I would be supportive of that.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
So the measure is fairly vague, but as I indicated in my first response, the city has already incorporated many of the laws referenced in this initiative. We've already incorporated by reference our own local measure. So it's a question of future legislation from the council and what effect that would have. You'd have to go back and change all of your ordinances. For instance, if the council felt that the density bonus law and the waivers and concessions in the density bonus law were preemptive and you wished for somehow to have a local affair, to have a local rule that overrides them, you'd have to go forward with legislation because the city's already adopted them by reference. So there's not time, even in a month, to figure out what the ripple implications would be. So we will do work within the amount of time that you're requesting us to do work. But I can tell you that a vague initiative like this and the 2,000-page code, well, we're only talking about mostly Title 10 and Title 11, but that's probably over 500 pages. To know what could change versus what the council may want to change. And then there's also an implication of fair housing laws. So it's very complex. This is a spider web where we're pulling on one corner and the whole thing's flexing. So the planning and zoning law is very complex. As you know, you've seen the draft housing element that went to HCD for review. And we have compliance. So the trick is also, before this ever gets on a ballot, this council has to make decisions on the housing element. It has to make decisions, if it wishes to, on legislation that is today affecting our existing zoning law. And I think community development is working on some of those measures. So it's a massive work program, and it's not possible in a week or two to somehow decide which issues the council may or may not wish to take up based upon this. And there's another measure just to add to the complexity of this. There is in here several statements that no modification to appropriations for state-funded programs shall occur, and no state grant applications or funding shall be denied as a result of the application of this section. No benefit or preference in state appropriations or grants shall be given to an entity that opts not to utilize the provisions of this section. So much of the funding that Burbank is very successful at getting in terms of housing funds, in terms of transportation funds, they're discretionary funds. This doesn't preclude the state from coming up with new programs that we may or may not qualify for in the future. So I think to the extent this provision tries to make sure cities aren't penalized, it fails to capture the nuance of the state budgeting process and the complexity of eligibility criteria that we could be facing in the future. So there's not an ironclad way to analyze this, and I'll leave it with that for now.
Mr. McDougall, let me ask you this. What we're considering tonight is a letter of support for this initiative, right? And there's several challenges along the way. The initiative people have to gather 1 million signatures, qualified signatures, to put it on the ballot. And then it goes before the voters of California. So by us issuing a letter of support, is that committing us to anything if it doesn't pass?
It's not.
So I think we're getting too much into the weeds here when it comes to this. I know you've got concerns, and it was voiced by Councilmember Schultz, before he signs anything, he wants to know, he wants to see the letter. That's a valid concern. But at the same time, this is just a letter of support. It's not a letter of, we're weighing in and here's our money. You know, it's still got to go through the process of people, 1 million signatures before April, or by April, the middle of April. And then it goes to the voters in November. And then the voters of the state of California decide. So I don't see why we can't move forward unless, if you want to vote against it, then, you're free to do so. Councilmember Springer.
Yes, thank you. I think we should do it tonight because it's actually pretty simple. Provides that local land use and zoning laws override conflicting state laws, initiative constitutional amendment. Provides that city and county land use and zoning laws, including local housing laws, override all conflicting state laws except in certain circumstances. And it goes on. It's just like half a page. So I think that even a letter could be done. I mean, the fuse on this is really short, and you don't have to sign nobody wants to sign or should have to sign a letter that they don't want to sign. But it's possible to get the letter, email it to us, and but it's really pretty simple. It's really pretty simple, and the other stuff we'll figure out moving forward. And just for example, tonight we talked about HSR and we've got BRT. We exercise local control all the time. And that's what this is all about. We owe it to our residents, to our people.
Councilmember
I think
Frutos?
we can get it done tonight. Thank you.
Councilmember Frutos?
I'm ready to move this forward and vote on it. I think it's important, and we need to send a strong message to our state representatives, because honestly, our local elected assembly member has failed us. We can just look at Senate Bill 9, Senate Bill 35, Senate Bill 10. Let's look at the Fry's and that huge project that by state law we had to work on. We can also look at the 6 and Cedar, that project. People of Burbank are very upset because we're not being represented. We are a chartered independent city. And all that we're doing is showing support for the rest of the cities along with our constituents that are pushing back to Sacramento. Our local representatives has failed us. And if you look at the November 1st, 2021, the attachment from the Attorney General of California has prepared the following title and summary of the chief purpose and points of the proposed measure. We don't need to be convoluted. It's a simple, do we stand with the people and just submit a letter of support? You sign it or you don't sign it. But it basically, Reader's Digest, Mr. Mayor, prevents state legislator and local legislative bodies from passing laws invalidating voter-approved local land use and zoning initiatives. Not Prop 13, not these other ones. It is specifically our support to see if they can get the voters to sign the petition to put it on the ballot. It is still a work in progress. I don't want to delay this in the minutia. I want to stand solid with the people in Burbank, whether it's the Pickwick or it's Fry's or any other SB 35 that's moving forward, or the overdevelopment of ADUs with no parking. We have lost local control. This is a strong symbol with our vote tonight, hopefully of a 5-0, that the council is listening to the constituents, and we are working to push back against Sacramento from changing our landscape, our city. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Just keep in mind,
sir.
my colleagues, keep in mind, like our city attorney mentioned, this is prospective. Okay, I don't know if they can come back, and I'm not sure, Mr. McDougall, if this measure does happen to pass in November, can we come back and deal with SB 10, SB 9, SB 35?
Well, I think we'd have the opportunity to leverage the bill, right? Once it's in place, if it gets approved, we can look at the landscape, and there may be opportunities to go back and shore up our code, to make a fresh look at our code and our development standards and our densities, we might be able to. But we'd have to go back and do new ordinances to change what are on the books, because in some places, the state already made us bend. So we've bent our code to meet the state, and then this gives us back authority. So there may, in terms of existing code, we may have to go back and redo some things. But certainly prospectively, if this passes, it tells the state, if you try to change our laws again, you're preempted. And we don't have to do anything. Those state laws would be preempted under this new bill. So it's the effect of that that's difficult to say at this time, and it's something that we certainly could be prepared for if this measure passes, but I'd be wildly speculating at this point.
Okay. Councilmember Schultz?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I just want to address the concerns of my colleagues. I could sense the frustration hearing Councilmember Fruto share his comments, so I just wanted to express that, look, this is something I support. I'm not trying to stand in the way of progress, and I'll interpret my friendly amendment as being rejected, Mr. Mayor. With that said, I'm happy to vote for it tonight. I think it will be a 5-0, but I just wanted to be clear for those watching at home. I think it's our job to ask the tough questions and to fully flush it out, because it's not just taking a position, it's hopefully educating the community. And that's all it was. I didn't think that it was best practices to skip the second step. That was a personal opinion. With that said, I do support the issue on its merits. It seems to me like I'm the only one who maybe had that hesitation. So with that being said, we can, call for the question and move it forward. And I'm comfortable. If the letter really is going to be that simple, we support it, a sentence or two, then in that particular case, I don't really see the issue.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Anthony, real quick. The question is.
Real quick to Councilmember Schultz's point, I'm fully supportive of signing the letter tonight. The only caveat is I would say bring a report back to council if it does qualify for the ballot, so we can have a further discussion on this.
Oh, I don't think we'll need a report. I think we'll know about it. Okay, so the question has been called for.
The other side of it is we could take an endorsement vote at that point, right? Different than a letter of support.
We'll see in April if the 1 million marker has been reached or not. Okay, we'll move forward. Madam City Clerk?
Mayor Talamantes?
Yes.
Councilmember Frutos?
Yes, for local control.
Thank you. Councilmember Schultz?
Yes.
Councilmember Springer?
Yes.
And Vice Mayor Anthony?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The final report is the adoption of a resolution of compensation plan for city clerk, city treasurer, appointed officials, department managers, and unrepresented mid-managers. Ms. Betsy McClinton, Management Services Department Director, please present the report. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the council. Again, Betsy McClinton with the Management Services Department. Tonight, I'm here to request council adoption of 3 resolutions related to compensation for the city clerk, city treasurer, appointed officials, which include the city manager and the city attorney, department managers, and unrepresented mid-managers. For ease of conversation tonight, I'm going to refer to the city clerk, city treasurer, appointed officials, and department managers collectively as executives. The City Council's adopted compensation policy specifies that, subject to the city's financial policies, the city will compensate employees at a level commensurate with the average of Burbank's relevant market to recruit and retain a well-qualified workforce. In compliance with this policy, staff proposes increases to salary for the executives and unrepresented mid-managers to bring them up to the average of Burbank's relevant market. As of July 2021, the beginning of fiscal year 21-22, the executives were on average 3.65% under the average of the market, and the unrepresented mid-managers were on average 3.36% under the average of the market. Additionally, staff proposes a 2-year salary plan for these employees. Council previously implemented a 2-year salary plan for these employees for fiscal years 1920 and 2021. To account for fiscal year 22-23, the second year in staff's proposed 2-year plan, staff proposes to add 2% to the salary increases. Staff recently conducted a study of actual market movement since 2018, which shows that the city's relevant market generally moves 2% each year. As such, 2% annual movement has consistently been used for salary increases in the second and third years in recent contracts with other city labor groups. Including the 2% in the 2-year salary plan for executives and unrepresented mid-managers would be consistent with recent council action and treat these employees similarly to the city's other employees. Adding the 2% for fiscal year 22-23 to the increases would bring the total increases over 2 years to 5.65% on average for executives and 5.36 on average for unrepresented mid-managers. However, again, it's important to note that this is a 2-year salary plan, and the total increase would be split equally over the 2 years, with the first increase for fiscal year 21-22 coming in January 2022 upon council adoption, and the second for fiscal year 22-23 in July 2022. The cost for these increases to the general fund for fiscal year 21-22 is $50,437 for executives and $145,663 for unrepresented mid-managers. The proposed increases tonight would achieve a savings to the general fund of $40,026. This proposed savings has been incorporated into and has improved the city's 5-year financial forecast. Staff recommends the proposed increases tonight because they bring the salaries for these employees into alignment with the city's compensation policy to pay the average of relevant market in a way that is financially responsible and improves the city's forecast. With that, I recommend that the City Council adopt the 3 proposed resolutions as outlined in the staff report. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the report. And my colleagues, any questions or comments for this agenda item? Councilmember Springer?
Yes, thank you, Ms. McClinton, for your report. And I just want to thank these staff members for showing up. I want to thank the city treasurer and the city clerk for showing up to work, doing a great job, working hard. Thank you. And I'll make the motion if you'd like me to.
I've got a comment to make as well before we get into the motion. I want to send kudos to all the managers and mid-managers for hanging in there and sacrificing during these challenging 2 years that we've been going through. I want to thank them personally for all their work, hanging in there. I know it's been tough times. It's been tough for all of us. We've been asking do more with less. We went through a period where we weren't able to hire. So hopefully we're moving forward in a direction where we can fully staff all of our departments, ASAP, if not sooner. But anyway, to all the managers and mid-managers, thank you very much. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. McClinton, for that report. And just to the people watching at home, housing costs are still going up. Inflation is on the rise. We have cities, our neighbors are, trying to poach our good city staff and employees. And so to compete, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about competing and keeping good, high quality workforce in the city. This is an absolute must. So I will be supporting this moving forward.
Councilmember Frutos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be supporting this, and I just wanted to echo everybody's sentiments about our managers and mid-level managers. Thank you. It's been a very difficult 2 years. I can tell you I learned a lot this last go-around as mayor, but most important, I was at my favorite sandwich shop, Giamella's, 2 days ago, and a predominant business owner and resident here in Burbank came up to me, and he was very disappointed that we seem to have had a huge changeover in the planning department, as he does a lot with his apartments and homes that he has in our city. And he asked me to do whatever I can to communicate that from a resident's perspective, he wanted to thank the longevity employees that have stuck it out, and that he's kind of disappointed that a lot of the experience, in his opinion, has been stolen to other cities that are paying better than the city of Burbank. And I know this is always a tough issue, but I know the last 2 years, especially my mayorship last year, the mid-level managers and department heads, thank you day in and day out. Thank you. And a lot of the residents appreciate your hard work. So I'll be supporting this.
Thank you, Councilmember Frutos. And that gentleman
Thank you,
you're
Mr.
talking
Mayor.
about, he didn't share any of the bad things with me. He just bought me a sandwich. Thank you. Councilmember Schultz?
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just to pile on or heap on the praise here, I think that what makes Burbank such an effective and well-oiled machine is the people that work here. And that includes everyone who we're talking about tonight. So I just want to say thank you. And I want to tell a very quick story. Our city manager can certainly attest to this. They're answering my calls, even on Christmas Eve, to the point where our city manager is saying, Nick, you really got to learn to pick up golf and find a way to turn it off. The point is that they continue to work and they're performing at a high level, and there is no turning it off right now when we're facing constraints from COVID. So my point is, thank you to all of our staff from top to bottom. Thank you for the job that you're doing. I support the recommendation as well. And just know that your work is very much noticed and appreciated.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll make it.
Yep. Councilmember Springer moves the item.
Ready? Adopt a resolution of the Council of the City of Burbank amending and restating the compensation plan for city clerk and city treasurer, appointed officials, and department managers. Adopt a resolution of the Council of the City of Burbank amending and restating the compensation plan for unrepresented mid-management employees. Adopt a resolution of the Council of the City of Burbank approving a citywide salary schedule.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Madam City Clerk?
Councilmember Springer?
Yes.
Councilmember Schultz?
Yes.
Councilmember Frutos?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Anthony?
Yes.
Mayor Talamantes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a time for brief council comments, including reporting on council committee assignments. Who would like to start? Councilmember Springer.
Yes, thank you. I attended the SCAG, Southern California Association of Government Energy and Environment Committee meeting, and I made a suggested agenda item of universal design and climate resilience. I'll tell you about that later. But and I had a meeting with Jamie Keyser, the head of the chamber, and with Carrie Kroll, the owner of Romancing the Bean, and we discussed ADA issues. And I did have a brief Zoom with the balloon people. And I attended, I toured a community garden, the Good Earth Community Garden in the West Adams area of Los Angeles with the Burbank Community Garden Committee. And that was a very nice field trip. And it's also under power lines. That's all, Mayor Talamantes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Councilmember Frutos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First and most important, I didn't want to let our city clerk, who works more than 8 hours a day, who's part of that, she also plays a key role in our city, but I wanted to save the best for the last. So thank you, Madam City Clerk. I did not forget about you. You do excellent work for us, and you put in more than 40 hours a week. Thank you. Okay, back on Wednesday, January the 5th, I represented the city of Burbank. I sit on the Los Angeles County Civil Brand Commission for institutional inspections, and we worked on a policy that we're formulating to how incarceration, which would also affect Burbank, how do we take care of the nutritional needs of an inmate that is pregnant with childbirth on the way? So I'm working on that policy, representing our city, showing the human compassion for these ladies that are in incarceration. On Friday, January the 7th, I also attended a brief meeting with a balloon ordinance from the California Retailers Association. On Saturday, I attended the DeBell Golf Course driving range, the grand unveiling reopening. And that is it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Next, Councilmember Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. On Thursday, January 6th, I attended the SCAG Community Economic and Human Development Committee meeting. And there was some really great information. We can have staff distribute it about the California Housing Finance Agency, which is a public entity that offers a variety of home ownership programs, assistance with securing enough funds for a down payment on your home. There's also a new program that we just launched called the ADU Grant Program, which is really focused on connecting people to low-income housing units. After that meeting and then before tonight's meeting, I had a chance to connect with our assistant city manager. And so I think there'll be some things in the works about making sure that our residents are aware of those resources to the extent that they might help them in our community. Monday, January 10th, I had a chance to join city staff for a review of our 5-year forecast of recurring and non-recurring revenues and expenditures, just to get a better handle on where we're at, where we're going, what the trends are. So thank you to staff. Thank you, Ms. Becker, so much for putting that together. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. And lastly, today I had a Zoom with some of my fellow neighbors in the Rancho, just talking about council goal setting and some of the things that we can do. It's that time of year again, so I guess we'll be talking about it on the 31st. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On Saturday, I attended the emergency school board meeting. I left after the first hour, but apparently they went for a full 8 hours. So if we ever have an emergency meeting, let's not go to 8 hours. And I'm happy to report that as of yesterday, my son is now back in school at Burbank Unified, and everything's going great, and we're hearing good reports back. I'm glad everyone's safe and they're taking the precautions necessary. Last night I attended the local PFLAG. It was great. There were a couple of new faces, some old faces that we all know and love, and good to connect with folks on that level. And then this morning I had a brief conversation with a constituent about the gap there's a bike lane gap on the new bridge. When we unveiled it, we didn't look behind us. There is a short section that is missing bike lane striping. So that was a conversation I heard from a constituent, and I'll be following up with that. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to everyone listening.
Thank you. I'll finish up with just a few items that I participated in. I attended the San Fernando Valley Service Council online virtual meeting. I also attended a special LOCEN board meeting. Seems like all these meetings are special. I attended the SCAG Transportation Committee, and then I had a Teams meeting with Metro staff regarding the North Hollywood to Pasadena BRT. They gave me an update, and it's not what we want to hear, but as we're moving forward. That's all I have. Other than that, last but not least, I want to acknowledge our city clerk as well. Well, congratulations for all the great work you're doing, and your staff. Obviously, you always have to have a strong staff for you to be on top of the, right? Exactly. So city manager, as long as we're spreading kudos, thank you very much for all your work, and the assistant city manager. And last but not least, our city attorney. Thank you, Mr. McDougall, for all your work, and press attaboy to all the staff in the city attorney's office. Bless. Thank you very much.
The city treasurer, too.
Yes, Crystal Palmer, the city treasurer too. She doesn't show up very often, but I've got her showing up on January 25th. She will be with us. Oh, yeah. And I want to make a reminder to everyone that Burbank Tournament of Roses Association is having a fundraiser at Bob's Big Boy next Tuesday, January 18th. Next Tuesday, January 18th, Bob's Big Boy. Hope to see everybody there. Awesome night with Bob's Big Boy burgers, or salads if some people decide to go with salads. But anyway, now is the time for the introduction of additional agenda items. Do members of the council have any items to introduce? Oh, Councilmember Frutos.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager, I would like a public report from our chief of police, kind of the same thing we did up on Amherst and Glen Oaks. I'm very interested on the email that we received from Ms. Penny Katzman And this way the public can be informed, just the way we did the presentation of the accident, what happened, and what we're doing. I think the public would benefit from that at our next meeting by the chief. That's it, sir. Thank you.
Got it.
And Mr. City Manager, I have one item real quick to request in regards to see how we can coordinate some type of testing center with LA County. You know, they've been having them around the county. I like to see Burbank participate in some type of testing in coordination with LA County.
We will desperately try and report back to you, and we'll try to do that as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Springer?
Yes, thank you. I'd like an agenda item to discuss or inform us on the process for historic designation of neighborhoods in Burbank. Thank you.
Sure.
I think we went through that several years ago. Okay, any other council members with agenda items? Thank you very much. We now adjourn the meeting to Tuesday, January 25th at 6 p.m. for a regular meeting through an online meeting process. The public may view the meeting online or on television and will be able to provide public comment in the following 3 ways: by leaving an e-comment on the city webpage, which is burbankca.gov/e-comments. The second way is by emailing the city council directly at citycouncil@burbankca.gov. And the third way is by calling in directly to the council meeting at 818-238-3335. Thank you very much and good night. Be safe, everybody.